of the board members. So everyone just make sure you really catch my attention.
I started it, but it takes about 40 seconds to go live. So.
Okay.
Is anybody pulling it up where we can see it?
Oh, I've got it.
Just let me know, Bob.
Okay.
It looks fine.
Is it up?
I can see all of them.
Okay.
Ryan, watch yourself.
Okay. We're rolling. That's going to be the hard part, is moving this camera back and forth.
I'm going to call to order the special meeting of the Woodford County Board of Education. Let the record show that all members are present. The first item on the agenda is an opportunity for audience public comment.
Debbie, I had a quick question about that.
Of course.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, I wasn't sure if my volume was up. I was really glad to see that was added on tonight. I think that's wonderful. Is this an addition that you made to the agenda?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to say thank you. And moving forward, I think we should have this on every agenda from now on. Mr. Hawkins, is that something you can add to the agenda from now on?
Now I can't hear. I'm sorry. Sherry, can you say it again?
Yes. I don't know where my volume button is. Is it me or was it you?
No, it just completely went out, but you're back on.
Okay. I just was thanking you for adding that to the agenda.
Right.
And I was wondering if that was something Mr. Hawkins could just add to our agendas in the future.
We can talk about it in discussion. We've only just had it a regular meeting. I added it for this meeting because this is such a topic that is, you know, we really haven't had an opportunity to hear from the public, and it's such a critical issue. So I think that's something that I think we should talk about as a board. But yeah, we can. I don't think we can talk about it tonight, Sherry, but let's talk about it at the planning meeting, okay?
That sounds fine. I just think it's a real valuable thing to do, and I
Make
appreciate
sure that
it.
it's on discussion for the planning meeting, if I can remember, please. Okay? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Sherry. That's a good thing for us to address another time. All right. Now we're ready for audience public comment.
Okay.
You're good.
Okay, so there are currently 9 submissions. The first is from Kelly Bringelman. She says, I'm writing to express my concern over the proposed plans for going back to school in August during the COVID-19 pandemic. Option 1 does not come close to a safe environment for our students, as it will be impossible for there to be enough space in the classrooms and hallways for appropriate distancing. It is my hope that Woodford County will consider their options and offer an every other day or every other week schedule to cut down on population numbers. While option 2 offers ultimate distancing, the quality of education and mental well-being of the students is severely affected. If an alternating schedule is offered, everyone can benefit from in-person schooling in a much safer manner. With the current options available, I believe many parents will consider alternative forms of education over public school. Please reconsider option 1 to allow for an alternating schedule. Sincerely yours, Kelly Bringelman. Danielle McGeorge. Dear Mr. Hawkins, good evening. I know that there is a lot to weigh in on sending our children back to in-person school for the 2020-2021 school year, but please hear me out. I am a full-time RN at the VA in Lexington. I have been on the front lines of this very virus Monday through Friday since this all started. I have worn gear that will cause you to sweat in 2 minutes. After all this, you ask if I should still send my child back to school. The answer is absolutely. She will be in the 2nd grade at Huntertown, where I have the utmost respect for the staff and faith they can handle a return. There is zero research to go virtually. NTI and standardized modules are a joke. Other counties are giving options to parents, and we should be doing the same. I am a born and raised resident and graduate of Woodford County Schools. We have to socialize our children so that they can grow and become effective members of society. Keeping them home is not fair to their well-being. If we keep them home tucked away out of fear, there will be zero coping abilities, and we will raise another soft generation that cannot cope with feelings and the ability to apply the fact that life just sucks sometimes. I cannot give my child the time she deserves for education for a couple hours in the evening while I'm still wrangling her smaller twin sisters. She deserves a teacher, a classroom, relationships, and education. So find options. I am not a teacher. Send our kids back to school. Do not make working parents choose between their jobs and their children. I'll be watching the board meeting, awaiting your responses. Do the job we hired you for and stop going through the back door. Please understand the importance from the American Associations of Pediatrics. Returning to school is good for the children. Thank you for your time, and please feel free to reach out to me if you feel the need. Respectfully, Danielle McGeorge. Rita Penrod. I am sending this email in reference to kids going back to school. School being taught by the teachers is the best for all the kids, especially my 5 grandkids. I am no teacher, and it's not easy for just online classes. Their schooling should be with their teachers, their classmates. Kids don't want to do most or any of the work unless you really make them stay still enough to do it, and that's wrong. Doing it at home regardless of Chromebooks. One more problem is we don't have internet anymore for their house. Their mother can't afford it, so I'm in for school to be at school, period. Nicole Logan. Below are some questions about the options for school this fall. Will logins be time specific each day? Will curriculum go along with school curriculum so transition from one or the other is easily made? Will kids doing the online only option have the ability to get a Chromebook from the district? If option 1 is chosen, what is the likelihood that kids will be able to social distance in the classroom to avoid wearing a mask at their desk, specifically in elementary schools? Huntertown. Will playgrounds be available at the elementary schools, or will recess be standing around outside? Nicole Logan. Jamie Bland. My name is Jamie Bland, and I am the parent of a Huntertown first grader. I am writing you to suggest that a dual option be approved for agenda item 4A, determine re-entry model for 2020-2021 school year. It is imperative that parents have either option for sending their student to school in our current environment. One option does not work best for all students. My child, in particular, did not respond well to virtual learning in spring 2020. She has adamantly stated that she will wear a mask if allowed to attend school at Huntertown. Just because my child would respond best and thrive under the in-person option does not mean that should be the only option available to parents. Some students need to stay home, and some parents want their child to participate in a virtual academy. Options are critical to not having a significant education gap due to the COVID-19 pandemic. It would have been nice to have a public forum where the re-entry task force headed by Mr. Asher could have presented the public with their findings, instead of those interested having to go find their meeting notes and read them. A public forum would have allowed all parents, teachers, and stakeholders to hear what the task force and Mr. Hawkins had to say, as well as provide feedback on their findings and suggested solutions. I would like to publicly thank Mr. Hawkins and the task force for getting the survey out to us early, as some surrounding counties did not have that luxury. All parents are concerned with what the return to school will look like. If we are being honest, that is probably our number one concern right now, such that we can make decisions for our families going into fall 2020. Our employers are waiting to hear from us when we can come back to work, if we have that luxury of working from home. We are worried about ETC and other child care needs and how each scenario might affect our ability to provide for our families and educate our kids. We want to make sure we are not going to have to choose between food on the table and an education for our children. Each family's criteria for what they will choose is unique for them, and only they know what is best for their household. Please make sure both option A and option B are available to our students and families for the 2020-2021 school year. Please do everything in your power as school board members to support that endeavor with the resources needed to educate our children effectively and support our teachers and administrators in this unprecedented time. Thank you for your time. Jamie L. Bland, parent of a Huntertown first grader. Veronica Parker. First, thank you to our wonderful teachers and staff for all they have done during this unprecedented time. They are very much appreciated. Second, as a parent of 2 Woodford County students, I sincerely hope Woodford County is able to offer both in-school learning and virtual learning for all students. A reasonable compromise would be to consider half days for in-person learning, dividing up the classes so everyone can be present. This would go a long way to keeping kids engaged in a structured learning environment. Third, as the chairperson of WEEF, our organization works very hard to raise money for our students and then is diligent about being fiscally responsible with that money. We are entrusted with hard-earned funds from our sponsors every year, and we work to keep expenses down to a minimum while providing first-class performances and much-needed supplies to our schools. I am asking the board to please delay a new high school and unrestrict school funds until the COVID-19 crisis is over. The duty elected board members are entrusted with our hard-earned tax dollars, and it is your job to be responsible with them. There is no doubt we need a new high school, but at this time there are too many unknowns and too much money at stake to continue this fool's errand. It is my hope that the board will reverse course and set a good example for this community. Veronica Parker. Okay, the 7th one is from Ken and Amy Marshall, parents of a 5th grade student. We would like to encourage the board to extend a 3rd reentry option to families to include a hybrid schedule, a mixture of in-class learning days and days of virtual learning. The survey we took earlier this year asked several questions regarding hybrid scheduling. However, it is not clear whether this was ever considered. For the sector of parents who are not comfortable with all in-class learning at this moment, nor do not feel comfortable with all virtual learning, this allows an opportunity to opt in for both. Splitting the time our students receive instruction between the classroom and virtual also gives our consideration to the health of the employees inside the buildings by increasing opportunities to practice social distancing, increasing cleaning opportunities, and better monitoring of smaller classrooms to ensure safety is being optimized. Our family is very pro-masks. To us, it aligns with our personal faith and is a display of empathy and consideration for our fellow humans. I totally support and agree with mask wearing in the school to protect everyone. However, no one denies they are miserable. A hybrid option allows the children to go to school, to see teachers, to see friends, and with fewer students in the classroom, students could be seated 6 feet apart, therefore greatly reducing the amount of time students would be required to wear a mask during the day. As a parent, I also have questions. The first, how will the new attendance policy read? 7 parent notes will not cover self-isolation when a fellow student, teacher, administrator, family member, or parental business associate is found to be positive through contact tracing. Number 2, what happens when the teacher is found to be positive? Number 3, what happens when a child in the class is found to be positive? Number 4, will my child need a negative COVID test to re-enter the school building upon exiting quarantine, isolation, or having to leave the school for a fever? Number 5, can my child be properly fitted for a face shield? Thank you for your consideration of our request. Like all parents, we too just want healthy, well-adjusted children on the other side of this pandemic and are looking at all avenues to achieve this goal. Ken and Amy Marshall. Tiffany Morgan. Regarding option 1, what is the plan for cleaning of the classrooms, the common spaces, and the bathrooms in each building? Will additional staff be brought in to ensure proper cleaning is done? I see a larger opportunity to clean all of these spaces more frequently with a hybrid model. Other districts are carving out a full day during the week for cleaning. I don't see it mentioned in our plans, and it is a critical factor. Thank you, Tiffany Morgan. Number 9, Kevin Kelly. Dear Superintendent Hawkins and Woodford County School Board members, thank you for this opportunity to comment on the proposed plan for reopening our schools, which I became aware of from a Facebook post by Mrs. Bradley. As we know, The challenges presented by the COVID-19 pandemic are unprecedented in our lifetimes, and there remain questions about the disease. I know my children miss the interaction with their friends and teachers and the structure that a school day provides them. As school board members and administrators, I know you want the return to the classroom to be as safe as possible for the students, but also for the teachers, staff, and family members of everyone in the school community. In lieu of an opportunity to voice an opinion beyond a one-time survey, I want to take this opportunity to say that the plan in front of you to return to in-person classes with no consideration of a hybrid option like some other districts troubles me. How will students safely social distance with nearly 30 students in classrooms? If there is no ability to stay 6 feet apart, students will be in masks the majority of the day. While we want students to wear masks, expecting children to remain in them for 6 hours is unrealistic. While many students will follow the rules, many may refuse to wear a mask or remove it if it is uncomfortable. Also, how will middle and high school students change classes? Will each classroom be disinfected before each new group enters? How will contact tracers track down which students were in contact with a COVID-19 positive student when the hallways are packed at class changes? I don't envy the task in front of you. Whichever plan is accepted could impact the health of our entire community. My hope is the board develops a solution that ensures that learning continues in the safest way possible for all students, staff, and teachers. Thank you for your time and consideration. Sincerely, Kevin Kelly, parent. Melody Troggett. I have read the 2 options for returning to school. As a parent, I feel that returning to school is best for our kids. However, what happens if more parents choose option 1? How will this work in terms of safe social distancing? I feel that a hybrid model is safer for the children and teachers as it would allow for smaller class sizes for social distancing. Is a hybrid model not an option at this point? Why was it decided to choose the 5-day model? Thank you, Melody Troggett. And that is all we have.
Thank you, Elaine. The next item, we're going to go to our regular agenda, and it's item A, determine re-entry model for 2021 school year. Mr. Hawkins?
All right. Thank you, Ms. Edelin. Want to spend a few minutes kind of giving you a little bit of background on how we got to this point, and then walking through each one of the options. And I think I'll be able to address some of the questions. Obviously, I've got a lot of staff here tonight, so that as other questions are come up, then we'll do our best to address those as well. I do think it's fair to say, though, that we're dealing with a situation that nobody's ever faced before, and so there may be some questions that don't have an answer right now. And so we will, again, do our best to answer those questions that come up, but again, I'll kind of want to walk through this document, this draft that was sent to you last week. When the school year ended, about the second week of May, we immediately began discussing and talking about what re-entry might look like. We received, I think, the first guidance document from the Kentucky Department of Education probably about the fourth week of May, and so we began to explore different models for re-entry. And I'd like to go ahead, because it was mentioned so many times on the hybrid model, the every other day. Let me just kind of address that before I get into our document. When that first came to us, and that was one of the early guidance documents that came from KDE, I think we all believed that was going to be a really good option for us to take a look at. And so we began exploring that and seeing how it could potentially be implemented. And we just kept running into hurdles that could not be answered. questions that could not be answered, issues that could not be addressed. And I'm going to kind of walk you through about 5 of those to, I think, help explain why we just could not see that as a viable option. First was scheduling, particularly at the middle and high school. And while on the surface you can say, well, just have half your students come, given that the students don't stay in a cohort all day, that may work in the first period class, but there's no guarantee that it works second, third, fourth at the high school and through 6th period at the middle school. So while, again, you may be able to address the half of the student body initially, it's very difficult for that to maintain because, again, the classes, students don't stay together all the way through the day, particularly at the high school when you're looking at an every other day schedule. So scheduling was a hurdle when it came to the every other day model. Second was childcare. And not just childcare, but having someone who could assist the child with the work. We have many families that don't have someone to watch their children every other day. While some can, many would not have that opportunity. They have to work. But it's not just having a babysitter. It would be having a person that would be able to instruct that child and help that child with their work, because the teacher's not going to be available on that off day. They'll be teaching the rest of the class. So, and I do not think it would be fair to ask a teacher to try to do both things during the day with half the students at home, half the students sitting in front of them. So again, I think the child care, but not, it goes beyond just having a babysitter. Having someone who could work with that child to be able to complete the work that would be due on the day that they are not in school. The third thing is that same issue applies to a number of our staff members. We have a lot of teachers and classified staff who have school-age children. What would they do with their kids on the off day without child care? Without someone that would be able to help them during the day with their work. So that was the third thing. Fourth is food service. Our food service staff would be expected to not only feed the kids who were present, but also to provide a meal for those who are virtual. And we know that many of our students, that's the best meals they get during the day. And so how would you manage being able to do a drive-through pickup for students who are virtual while you're also trying to feed the students who are present? So that was another issue that we struggled to overcome. And then finally, I think we know the importance of having kids in the classroom. The every other day model means that you would have access to a teacher 50% of the time. Because you would have in person, the next day you would be on your own, the next day you would be in person. So again, having access to the teacher 50% of the time, which is far less than in either the all virtual or the dual system model that we have talked about. So again, I think we had very high hopes that an every other day, every other week model might be a really good option for us, but those were 5 of the things that just kept surfacing that we just did not feel like we could get through in order to be able to do it. So I just kind of wanted to address that because I know that came up several times. And again, on the surface, it sounds like, well, just let half your kids come. But it's not just that easy. I think the other thing too, and this is just a side note, is that you would want siblings to go on the same day. Trying to schedule that would be difficult, especially if you have blended families where kids may not have the the same last name, and they're at different parts of the alphabet. Because if you're trying to break it down in half, you have to have some type of organized way to do that. So that was another issue, again, that we felt was problematic. So again, just kind of wanted to address that up front. So we'll go through then the different options. And again, I'm very proud of the team here. This is something that we've worked on, met more than once a week since school has ended to be able to go through this. We've surveyed to get feedback, not only from families but also from teachers and classified staff. I'm proud of that survey work. We've probably had 7 or 8 school districts ask us to use our survey. So again, I think it was gave us quality information. A couple things from the survey really drove the options that we put together. Number one is that 56% of families who responded said they wanted their kids to come back to school even if masks were to be required. Another question resulted in 75% saying that they wanted as much in-person instruction as possible. So those two really kind of drove how we developed this particular model. And when you look at the in-person, I'm certainly pleased that we have some flexibility in that they said that if you cannot maintain the 6 feet, that students can return in mask. And so you'll see a section there on the in-person that mask will be required if we're not able to maintain the 6 feet social distance. They'll be worn when students are moving about within the building, and that is pretty standard no matter what plan you look at. If you're moving, you're masking. They will be required to be worn on the bus. The exception to all of the mask rules are preschool and kindergarten, and that was straight from the State Department of Health guidance. And then I think it's important, until you kind of get used to wearing these for extended periods of time, you need a little break from time to time from the mask. And that's something we will ask our teachers to work with students on, is how can we take a little mask break, to take 5 minutes, make sure that we get students 6 feet apart in some way or form. Again, that may look different from classroom to classroom, but I'm confident that our teachers can come up with some creative ways to take mask breaks throughout the day. Any questions on the mask?
I have some questions on the hybrid.
Okay.
Do you want to do those all at the end, or do you want to?
No, you can go ahead.
So, on kind of moving from the last one first, do we not have family grouping on Infinite Campus? When we fill out our family surveys each year, we have to list siblings, is it not?
We do, and I'm not saying that you can't, but to do let's say you did half the students by alphabet. If that's the way you tried to break it up, you would have to ensure that every sibling who did not have the same last name that fell in the other category was included in that other segment of students. So in other words, if it was a blended family and one of them's last name ended in a B and the other one ended in an S, you would have to ensure, because again, if you're talking about doing a 50-50 split, you would have to figure out a logical way to do the 50-50 split.
Okay.
And so it would just create some issues potentially. And again, that one is a little bit more minor compared to the other ones.
Okay. I know that all of the superintendents have been working together on this and having regular contact. How are some of the other schools managing the hybrid option? What are some of the things you've heard?
Actually, the superintendents I have talked to, I have not talked to one yet that is doing an every other day or every other week model. I'm not saying that some districts might not be doing it. They may be. I'm saying the ones that I've spoken to are not considering that.
have you talked to any that are doing like Monday, Tuesday in-person instruction, and then say Wednesday is an all virtual for the district, and then Thursday, Friday are the second group?
It's still the same issue. When you talk about childcare, when you talk about having the instruction available for kids, that doesn't change the issue for staff. It doesn't change the issue for parents who are trying to find childcare who have to go to work every day. So
Okay.
whether you do Monday, Tuesday, or whether you flip it every other day or every other week, those issues are still there.
No, I understand that. And I think that those are all valid issues for sure. And I think too, in mentioning the staff issues, have we considered surveying our staff after they have seen the options? I think maybe when we surveyed them going into it, they didn't have all of the information because this has been such a rapidly changing subject and situation for not just our district, but our country. Is there any thought to surveying again and saying what are your feelings about your personal safety going into this with these options in place?
When we surveyed before, again, we still had the mask information in there. That was part of the survey, I believe. It said that masks would be required.
Yeah.
The biggest, and again, there are going to be some staff that will have some concerns and may need to be virtual instructors. We understand that, and we're prepared to work with those staff members. But I think 75%, at least 75% said they wanted to return. The biggest concern that they had was childcare. That if their students aren't in school, that would be very problematic for them.
Okay. Can you share the results of the staff surveys with us?
Sure.
Thank you. On the doubling the work, for our teachers. So if we did do a hybrid model and had half of the kids there just saying Monday and Tuesday, would we not only have to have half of the staff so that then they could switch out and kind of follow their grouping of students so that Mr. Hawkins teaches this group of kids on Monday and Tuesday and then he follows them to virtual on Thursday and Friday? And then Dr. Jones teaches a group alternating with that. So it's not doubling the work because you would stay with the same student group delivering consistent content. Does that make sense?
Well, you would need additional staff because if there's 24 students in your class, 12 would come on Monday, Tuesday. The other 12 would come on Thursday and Friday.
Okay, I thought our staffing formulas were based on the number of students.
They are, but I'm saying if you're looking at a hybrid model and you had 22 students in a third grade classroom, in Miss Bradley's third grade classroom, you would have 11 on Monday, Tuesday. You would be responsible for the other 11 on Thursday, Friday.
Okay. I think on the feedback that I shared with you and with the board, that a hybrid model was definitely something that we heard
Sure.
was really something that parents were asking us to consider. I just
Sure.
want to make sure that we've been as diligent as possible on that. So I just wanted to ask those questions before we moved on to the next topic.
Absolutely. And again, I think when it first came out, I think that was our thought, that we could make this work. I think it is extremely problematic. And I think it's very problematic for our families. I know a lot of families may be able to do it, but we have a fair number of people that they go to work every day and would not have an opportunity. We heard that some as well in the public comment, that many families would not be able to do it. And so that's the thing about the hybrid model. If you do it, it's for everybody. I can't do a hybrid model for 50% of the kids and a dual and a everyday in person for kids too.
No, you can't do that, but you can do a hybrid model every day and then an all virtual model. Because I think that some families are definitely going to choose
Right.
to stay with the
Right.
all virtual model and limit their child's contacts. And I mean, it's difficult to make these decisions not knowing how the numbers are going to be, and I understand you're stuck there. I just want to make sure we're
Yeah.
vetting all of the options
Yeah.
as thoroughly as we can.
And I will say, and again, I think we have discussed that extremely thoroughly to try to figure that option out. And I can tell you, I've been meeting with a small group of superintendents over the last several weeks, and I've asked them, does anybody have a plan for this? And I haven't heard one yet. So again, I think we're all facing the same issues when it comes to the every other day or 2 days a week or whatever the case may be model.
I just have a quick comment and a question. I know last month, Mr. Hawkins, you said that you were interested in doing a follow-up survey now that we maybe have a little more information, and that you were also interested in doing a town hall so that you could, answer questions. Are those things still going to happen?
Yeah, I think the town hall obviously would be a good thing. Hopefully we'll be able to answer a lot of the questions tonight, but if we need to do a town hall, we certainly can. The follow-up survey would be for parents to pick, though, in terms of which option they're going to choose. And again, I think it's important that we have parent choice to return to school. And so I understand that families will have to make that decision for themselves. But again, I just wanted to ensure the board that we had thoroughly discussed and considered the hybrid model. Because again, from the outside looking in, it doesn't appear hard until you start trying to figure out all the logistics involved.
I have a quick question, if you
Yes.
don't mind. It's just about food, food delivery. It seems like the issue for hybrid is going to be the same issue if we have we're still going to be, even with the parent choice, which I'm calling the option of going, the
Right.
all virtual or all in school, we'll still have that food care where we're delivering food, right?
Well, it would actually be an easier situation, because if a child or if a family chooses all virtual, we could do our week meal bags like we did during the summer.
We'll still be doing all that.
We absolutely would still be doing meal bags, but we could do those for a week and do those on a Monday, which would be much easier on the food service staff than it would be trying to coordinate a grabbing or a delivery system or a pickup system while still feeding kids in the cafeteria. So,
Okay, thank you.
all right.
Hold on, Mr. Hawkins. I think Ms. Richardson was trying to ask a question too at
Okay.
the same time. That overlapped with Ms.
Okay.
Egan.
Scott, how recent was the survey that you sent out to the teachers?
3 weeks ago.
It's probably about 3 weeks ago.
Three weeks ago?
3 4 weeks.
Yeah, it's probably in the middle of June.
June 8th.
June 8th.
Okay, and was that an at-risk survey, or did that give them options of how they feel about entering back into school? What type of survey was that?
It asked them what their thoughts were on returning. Did they feel like they could return or would want to return? Would they have concerns about returning?
If they couldn't return, what would be some of the reasons?
If they couldn't return, what would be some of the reasons? But they were provided an opportunity to kind of share that feedback with us.
And as well as to give an opinion on how they would like reentry to be, because to me it seems like they are actually the at-risk community when we reenter. Most of our teachers are in the age group of people who are higher risk for COVID. Were they given the option, and are they going to be given the option in a more recent survey to be able to express their concerns?
We'll certainly follow back up once a decision is made. However, I don't think that the vast majority of our teachers are in a high-risk category as far as age. Pardon?
But they are in a higher risk than our students, is that correct?
Well, adults always are going to be higher risk than kids.
Right.
We
So
did
will
ask
they
them.
be given the option before we make a decision to voice their concerns about how they would like reentry to look?
I mean, there's a, we didn't, I mean, we can certainly do another survey. We did, the reentry task force has probably 17 or 18 teachers representing multiple buildings. And they had an opportunity to share feedback and ask questions and share concerns and those types of things. So we do feel like we've gotten some information back through that process as well. But again, I'll go back to 75% of the staff who responded said they wanted to return.
Are we?
What about the, what's,
Oh, I'm sorry, Ambrose, I think Allison's still talking.
yes,
Are we able to see the results of that survey as well?
Sure, I think Ms. Bradley just asked for that. We can certainly send that to you.
Okay, great, thank you.
Scott, did that survey go to classified employees also?
Yes, it did. We sent a separate one to them.
Would you,
Can we get
how would you characterize our classified staff?
It was about the same percentage. It was right around 75% said they wanted to return.
No, okay.
Yeah, I think it'd be helpful if we can take a look at those and again, reach back out to them when we have plans that they can kind of weigh in on with the change in, I think everyone thought we would be looking at the 6 feet apart.
I don't know that anybody ever thought that we would be able to completely do 6 feet apart. Our schools are not built for that, unless you're only going to have half the kids in the classroom. And
Sure.
and I can tell you early on in when we kind of shared some information, and we kind of determined that the A-B model or the alternating day model was not going to be viable. Again, obviously we want to create as much distance as possible. And if you look at the information from the American Academy of Pediatrics, they've indicated that 3 to 6 feet is fine as long as students are in masks. And so, that is something that I think is extremely important guidance from pediatricians. And the Center for Infectious Disease sent something out today that was very much in agreement with the American Association of Pediatrics as well. Now, I'm sorry, go ahead. No, you had another question?
Yeah, I was. I didn't know if somebody else was trying to speak. On the hybrid, as far as staffing, and I guess this is just a question in general as well, what is our staffing formula for virtual? Because perhaps on the hybrid, if we had 12 kids in a room on Monday, Tuesday, they switch over to virtual on Thursday, Friday. Do we still need 1 teacher per 12? Or in a virtual setting, could we put 2 groups of 12 together? And how are we handling the virtual class size? I don't know what we did last. Well, I guess everybody was already in classes last year.
I mean, we're not
It doesn't seem like it would be necessary to keep 12 kids in a virtual class. You could make those bigger.
Well,
Especially if we have a kind of a, it sounds like a curriculum. I don't know
Right.
that's already that they're working on online.
we're not going to pile students in, and assign 50 kids to a teacher virtually. And
No, I meant 24. Like, what are we going to do?
I mean, that could very easily happen, that they would have a cap size. And what we have talked about, particularly at the elementary level, with the virtual model, is that you may pull students together from all 4 schools in a particular grade level. and a teacher would be assigned to that group of students virtually. So it wouldn't necessarily be from each school individually, unless that school had a large enough number to justify that for a particular online classroom. So, again, at the middle and high, it's going to be very dependent on the number of students who choose the virtual, and then we'll have to assign staff accordingly to try to match up certifications and those types of things.
Yeah, I guess my point was just thinking about the hybrid, which again, I know is, I just want to make sure we have all our questions, I've thought of all the questions I have, is that we don't necessarily need to double our staff, because with the virtual, we would, the whole idea of hybrid in person is that you only have 12 kids in the room, so your exposure is cut dramatically.
At a given time.
That isn't the same for the virtual portion of the hybrid, where you wouldn't necessarily need one teacher.
Well, but your exposure is not going to change a great deal. If I have 12 students today and 12 students tomorrow, I've still been exposed to 24 students, whether that's over a 2-day period or in a 1-day period.
Well, I guess I was thinking about those students being exposed to each other too.
Well, but I'm just saying though, if we're concerned about, we were talking about the teacher having the exposure, they're exposed to the same number of kids over a 2-day period.
But I was thinking about just keeping everybody apart in the room.
Right. And again,
really, it's going to be easier for the teacher to stay apart from the kids if there's 12.
Well, and we're going to do the best that we can from a social distance standpoint. But I guess one of the things you have to look at is a teacher safer with 18 kids in a mask than 12 kids without a mask, even if they're socially distant. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know that anybody does. But again, those are all the pieces that you have to try to weigh out in a situation that we've never dealt with before. But also want to go back on, and I want to kind of put some things in terms of context, because we talked about when we surveyed the staff was the week of June 8th. I was asked on June 15th if I had a plan. I didn't get final guidance from the governor until June 24th. And then we had our final plan on July 1st. So within 3 weeks of the staff survey and within 1 week of getting guidance from the governor and the Department of Health, we had our plan together. I don't know that we could have surveyed many more times to be able to include that in the document that we have presented to you.
Nancy, I have another question, or kind of a statement that I want to make.
Absolutely.
I know that Danny put this out on Voices of Ourselves a few days ago, and we had a great response, a lot of parents responding to it. We didn't really have any teacher responses, probably obvious reasons. They don't want to put their opinion out there because you always get some sort of person who disagrees with the way you put it out. I know that Scott put this on the agenda tonight as an action item, but I feel like that if we're going to do a town hall, why are we going to do a town hall after the decision has been made? And I also feel like that we need to send out a survey to teachers asking how they think reentry should go, because they are the ones who are going to be with our kids every single day. I don't feel like we're making a decision on this tonight. If we can schedule a town hall late this week or early next week and let them be heard and let parents be heard after they've seen all of these options and new options, and we've discussed this tonight, I think we have a lot of people viewing tonight and kind of hearing what we're talking about. And I think that us making a decision on it is kind of backhanded, really, considering that, we were sent these options, but our community wasn't. It had to be put out there by a board member. I don't feel comfortable making a choice tonight, when it's not really going to make that big of a difference if we wait a couple more days and try to get input from teachers, staff, more parents who are concerned about what reentry is going to look like. It makes me nervous of the backlash that we're going to get if we make a decision tonight based on how we feel about reentry.
Right. And let me just say very quickly, I I presented the agenda item for Miss Edelin to approve. It wasn't my idea for it to be approved tonight. This was in response.
I don't really think that we have to get into a discussion about who approved it.
Well, I mean, you insinuated that this was my agenda item, and it's not. I was responding to the board's request for a plan and wanting it to be approved as quickly as possible. That was stated.
We can move on from that as long as I feel like we can move on from that as long as we kind of fit in what we feel like is right to do for the community and our staff. I think we have a lot of teachers who are nervous about reentry because they are going to be in charge of our kids and seeing masks and checking temperatures. And I mean, this is a big issue. This isn't something that we can just make a decision on a whim because we have a couple of either or there options that we need to make a decision on. I think this is a lot bigger than that. I mean, we really need to hear if there's anything that needs to be, if there's anything that we've done that needs to have a town forum on, this is it. This is people's health. This is their children's health. This is their livelihoods, their jobs. We need to think about this before we make a decision tonight. I do not feel comfortable making a decision on this. I'm sorry.
Well, and I would say I agree with Allison that this is a huge decision. We're talking about safety. But with all due respect, Mr. Hawkins mentioned at Town Hall 2 or 3 weeks ago at the meeting, and no board member requested that or asked for that. I do feel like a town hall and public comment is important. That's why I was very pleased to see that public comment was on the agenda tonight. I will say that I know there have been social media posts, and I think one of yours this weekend, Allison, was saying how far behind we were making a decision, and that other districts have made a plan since early June, and then apologized to our students, staff, and parents. And I do believe that part of the job of being on the board is making hard decisions. So what I would say is we scheduled this entire meeting tonight. This meeting was scheduled so that we could determine the reentry model for the 2021 school year. And I believe that, the meetings cost money. I mean, with the attorney here, it's probably about $1,000 for this meeting. The sole purpose of the meeting is to do this tonight. And I'm not sure, what further information that we can gather between now and a day or two. I just am not sure the reasoning for that. I think that it's really important that people know these plans as early as possible, but it's also really important that our district staff knows these plans as early as possible. So we were one of the first districts, it sounds like from what you were saying, Mr. Hawkins, to do a survey, to talk to parents, to talk to staff, to get some information. We were, one of the first districts, it sounds like, to form this task force, and you guys have been meeting weekly, and those meetings have been public, I think. So I feel like at a certain point, just kind of kicking the can down the road, especially when we had a meeting specifically for this, really just isn't fair.
All right, so maybe there was some communications. I'm sorry, Allison, go ahead.
I understand what you're saying, Sherry. It does cost our taxpayers money, but I honestly can't put a value on the lives of our students or our staff. I would be willing to donate my income from this meeting or any other, from any other meeting to one of our schools. That's fine. I want to make a decision that is right for our students and our staff. And I've been reached out to by staff members. I've been reached out to by parents. I don't think we're ready for this. I don't think we're ready to make a decision. I understand what you're saying, Sherry, and I appreciate it. But it does sometimes take us as a board a little bit more heat to get our community involved. I understand that. That's what it involves. We're on the school board. You have to get the word out there. You have to get people fired up to comment, and I want to hear from them, and I know you do too. So
yeah, and I absolutely respect what you're saying. I think we totally agree on this. My only concern is, and the only thing that I differ with you is that we're having the meeting tonight. The meeting was planned. The meeting still costs taxpayers even if we donate the money back. And so to have a meeting, the sole purpose to be to determine the reentry model and then to kick it down the road, to me, just doesn't make a lot of sense. What other information would you like to have that we haven't already been given? Mr. Hawkins has surveyed the staff, he surveyed the parents. Danny did her post, and the meeting was public, we've had public comment. What other information would you like to have, I guess is my question.
Well, I would like to survey the parents again and reach more than, how many parents did we have respond?
We had about 40% respond, which is typically pretty good.
Out of 4,000, how many did you send out number-wise?
We sent an email out to everyone in Infinite Campus, and we got about 1,672, almost 1,700 responses.
Out of how many emails that you sent out?
It's hard to say.
We have a
Some
wrong.
families are put together, it's hard to say.
It's hard to say how many emails exactly went out.
Is it roughly 4,000, you think?
Roughly.
And okay, and that's a decent response. I'd like to get a better response, and I think the more that the board discusses this, the more response we'll get as well. But I also would like to have specifically a survey sent to teachers asking them how they would like re-entry to look. Not their at-risk,
Well, but
specifically they prefer re-entry to look.
I mean, the thing is, Ms. Richardson, is that they will have an opportunity, because you really have two options. Okay, if you look at it. Now, I know some people may say we've got a hybrid, but we have a dual system, virtual, in person. We have all virtual. When we ask teachers how they would like to return, or do they want to be in person? Do they want to be virtual? Are they good doing either one? We asked them that. And the thing is, we got almost 100% response from our certified employees. So, I mean, we did ask them how they wanted to come back to school.
But
now,
I think at that time, Mr. Hawkins, you've said too that you guys were moving forward thinking that a hybrid option was going to be.
not at that point.
Okay. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, 79.4% said they plan to return to work. And that was 214 responses from our certified staff.
Childcare was the primary
And
issue.
is that return to work in person or return to work?
Yes.
Yes. And wasn't there an option for saying they would do either?
What was the percentage on it? Depends.
Could you maybe send those to us so we can look at them while we're having this discussion?
And we had the question about in-person, either or.
Right.
Or virtual.
Right.
That question as well.
Yeah. Can you email that?
That's what I was gonna say, you want names in there?
I can go down and take screenshots
Yeah.
of everything.
I'll have Garrett send you some screenshots of it.
Thank you.
Let me go through the rest of the option, the in-person, if we can. Health and safety, obviously, we're going to need to take a child's temperature, either as they board the bus or as they enter into school. That would be required on any in-person model. We will certainly try to practice as social distance as much as we practically can. We will take breaks to hand wash and use hand sanitizer throughout the day. Increased cleaning and sanitizing protocols will be implemented. And again, now that could be a situation where additional staff would be needed to be able to support that throughout the day. The guidance from the Department of Health indicated that we should not do field trips until restrictions are modified. Classrooms and hallways. Primarily, our elementary students will be in their classroom throughout the day. Special area teachers will come to them. Library, art, music. However, we will hold PE in the gymnasium because we can space out and the kids would have the opportunity to move about. Middle and high school students, again, they would change classes, follow their normal schedule. Reason being, students don't stay together all day. So it would be impossible for teachers to rotate in our middle and high school classes. Particularly when you think about elective areas that have certain equipment in classrooms that would be needed for the class. Each school will create procedures to encourage social distancing during class changes. For example, one-way hallways, or an up stairwell and a down stairwell, so that we avoid students passing one another in the hall and we move in one direction. We will do our best to avoid large gatherings, like assemblies, where you would pull the school together as in an assembly. We would not do those, and we would avoid all the students going to the gym in the morning before school starts. They would report to the classroom. As far as cafeteria,
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
On that, at which point are you thinking temperature checks will be done?
What we discussed this morning, as a matter of fact, with our administrators, is doing that as the child is getting ready to enter the building. Potentially even not allowing parents to leave the parking lot until that temperature's been checked. So that if there is an issue, instead of them having to track down the parent after they've already left for work, and again, that's so we may have to take a few students at a time. The good thing is the thermometers that were purchased are infrared readers. So as soon as a student approaches it, it's on a stand. It's not handheld. It's on a stand. They approach it. It takes their temperature, and we know immediately what it is.
So how much are you thinking that's going to affect the drop-off times in the morning?
I think until it becomes a fine-oiled machine, it's going to be slow. But the first few weeks are slow anyway. And I think it's something just have to communicate to parents, this is what we're going to do. It may create that schools need to do a different traffic pattern within their parking lots to allow more cars to stack in there as much as we possibly can. But again, I think the more that we can make that determination before parents leave the actual school grounds, the better it's going to be for the family, for the child, for the school. But again, having the equipment to be able to do that, I think is going to be extremely helpful.
Sure. And what about the bus riders?
The bus riders, the plan is that they would, you'll see an agenda item about new positions. Those are for additional bus monitors. We would take the temperature as a child gets ready to get on the bus. Provide hand sanitizer, ensure that they're in a mask, and then get them seated. And that would allow that second adult on the bus to be able to handle a lot of those safety protocols for each student. I know there may be a question about what if the child, as they're getting on the bus, has a fever. We're not going to leave a child at a bus stop. If a parent is still not there available, then we would go ahead and transport the child to school. We would try to isolate them on the bus as much as we could, and then have them go immediately to the nurse upon arrival.
Question.
Yes.
Go ahead, Allison.
Mr. Hawkins, what do you plan to do if we have an educator who has an underlying health issue that is scared to return to work?
We would work with them on allowing them to be one of the virtual instructors.
Okay, and thank you. And then another question is, I know that all of us as parents have known about parents who send their kids, their kids wake up with a fever, they know they're not feeling good, they Tylenol or ibuprofen them, they send them to school, they get to school, there's no fever, and then at 10 o'clock, that wears off and they're running around with a fever all day. I'm just concerned about how we, taking the temperature when they get off of the bus in the morning, is one thing, and that's a great idea. But, you know, we've all experienced that where everyone knows, somebody knows their kid has the flu. They give them ibuprofen, they send them to school. Don't tell anybody, Mommy took your temperature this morning, just go to school. I don't have a babysitter, I have to go to work.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like that it's kind of like we're treading on thin ice. We don't really know if these kids are sick. And so if we do have a student like that, it turns out that they have COVID, they've infected another student, we do contact tracing. What do we do as a school district? Do we shut school down for 2 weeks?
And I'll try to answer some of those questions. You will never completely prevent a parent sending their child to school with a fever. Okay, we're going to try to catch as much of that as we can. Schools will have additional handheld thermometers so that if we feel like a child's not feeling well or something, we can take their temperature and hopefully avoid exposure. The other thing too is that if the child's been in a mask, it's less likely that they would have exposed other kids or other adults during that time frame. If we have a positive case, first of all, the health department would be the one notifying us. That's not something we would know because the health department would be contacted first. And then we would work with them on the contact tracing, providing the information that they needed. What they have talked about is that it might be that a few kids out of that classroom may need to go home and it wouldn't impact any other student. It will depend on who is considered high risk based on how much close contact they had with that child. But that's part of what the contact tracing does. Would it cause the entire school to shut down? Not likely. Again, it may impact a classroom, it may impact a grade level, but it wouldn't necessarily impact the entire school or the entire district. And that's some of the latest guidance we've gotten from the Department of Health. And again, that's why we're going to follow the strict guidelines in terms of the mask, in terms of kids sitting in the same seat every day, whether that's in the cafeteria, whether that's in the classroom, wherever the case may be, to be able to provide as much information on that contact tracing. So, but to answer your question on if somebody sends their child to school with a fever, hopefully we'll catch it when they come in the door. If not, our goal will be to catch it sometime during the day. But again, I don't know that we can ever prevent that. As far as cafeteria and recess, each school is going to determine their own plan for how they're going to serve breakfast, and the breakfast would be served in the classroom. Grab-and-go lunches, I know sometimes people think that just means cold sandwiches. That's not the case. Courtney's going to be working with her team on a menu. Grab-and-go means that the tray may just already be made, and the student grabs it and goes. It's not necessarily going to be cold sandwiches. So I know that has that connotation, but that's not what the case would be. Students will have an assigned seat in the cafeteria. Again, for the contact tracing purposes, so that we know exactly where they sat every day. Initially, we are going to say no to the playground equipment, but I think that's just until we get comfortable within the school year and we understand, because kids are still going to need to social distance even when they're outside for recess. It's not like they can congregate just because they're outside.
So what will they do on recess?
They could do a variety of things. They could walk, they could run, they could kick a ball. I mean, they could do any number of things while they're outside. It's just initially, we want to make sure that we get that piece down before we start utilizing the playground equipment and work with the health department on how it needs to be cleaned and that type of thing.
Will teachers be allowed to take temperatures as students walk in if they so choose to do so? If, like at the high school, if they have a rotating class throughout the day, and Mrs. Smith would like to take temperatures as her students walk in the room, will that be okay?
We weren't going to do random temperature checks. That wasn't the plan. We would check them when they came in the morning. that's the guidance that we've been given. And then if we notice that a child is sick, then obviously we would work with the nurse. The nurse would probably go to the classroom to check the temperature so that we avoid any additional exposure as the kid's moving from one place to another.
I think that would be definitely be something interesting to look into if teachers would want to do that. I mean, that would actually be a great benefit if you think about it for the parents who send their kids to school with ibuprofen. If a teacher so chooses to take temperatures, I don't understand why that would be a problem as, kind of cautionary.
Well, that may be a grant question, if we can just randomly take temperatures. I don't know if that's
Absolutely. Thank you.
if that's okay or not, but it would also
Grant's off his internet, in case you were wanting.
it would also require us, and if the board wants us to purchase these, we would have to purchase a handheld thermometer for every teacher. So if you want us to do that, we can do that.
Yeah, I think part of that is a resource issue. Part of it would be a targeting issue of whether any teacher could be accused of selecting a particular child or sending them out of the classroom because they had a behavior issue and just say, well, I checked their temperature and it was high, so I sent them out. I think it raises some concerns. I do think, particularly if there are students who have, this is advice I've given, in too many phone calls to count in too many districts, if there are either staff members or students who have a medical reason why they can't wear a mask, that those groups that they are in contact with, whether it's classroom-wide or however that's done, those groups should be checked temperature-wise several times throughout the day, because you're taking away one defense mechanism by the mask, then we should add back in another defense mechanism, which is more frequent temperature taking.
So we potentially would have to have thermometers for all of our teachers anyway.
I don't know how widespread that is going to be as far as the medical excuses go. If you are having students go by class at a time to pick up their lunch and take it back to a classroom, potentially somebody checking kids as they're filing through to wait in line to get their food is a way to kind of double dip. That would catch most of the students in the school without having to be a separate break from other instruction activities. That can be built into the schedule.
Yeah.
And that would also, if there was any concern about targeting, get rid of that issue, because it would just be the people in the cafeteria doing everybody, not the teacher in the room. Okay.
So that is option one, or that is the in-person portion of the dual system model.
I'm going to ask a couple questions,
Sure.
I guess, jumping in.
Sure.
Specifically about masks. So there will be some children who are excused from wearing a mask, even if they're in person?
Again, if there is a doctor statement, and I know Garrett has talked to Grant about this, we would want to work with that child individually. I think the thing that it doesn't mean that that's a guarantee that the child wouldn't have to wear a mask, because we also have to consider the health and welfare of everybody else. And so each one of those situations would have to be dealt with individually in order to make that determination.
So do we have a list of, or has the health department or anyone had a list developed that says what conditions would allow you to have that exception, so that we're not just kind of...
They won't put a list out.
Okay. And then on field trips, does that include sports games, band competitions?
Not necessarily.
Picnic competitions, or is that just going to the peach orchard?
It would be the in-school field trips, obviously, and we don't know what may transpire with fall activities. That those would be allowed to continue, and we would follow the normal bus protocols as it relates to those trips. I think as we get into the year, could we look at some field trips that maybe are in town or a close drive? I think that is something that we could certainly work with the health department on. But I think initially what they're just trying to limit, because it's not just the bus ride, it's then the gathering once they get there. And, is the place where they're going to be able to follow all the protocols that we have to follow within our schools?
Yeah, that's probably the biggest thing. It's
Yeah.
another giant exposure while on school time
Right.
And is
by going outside of our building.
masking the kind of conditions that you were just discussing, is that going to need to be a policy?
I don't think you can put a policy in place because I think it's going to be individual, case by case. And that's something, as we've talked with Grant, is that we're going to have to look to see, to determine if the legitimacy of the request, are there accommodations that can be made, and how does that impact the health and safety of other students as well. So all of that has to be factored in. I can tell you we'll probably be having a number of conversations with him if we have some of those situations. And
So ultimately, who will be making that decision?
it would probably be the district in consultation with the board attorney.
I know that Scott County has sent out a survey where they have 3 options. There's a full in-person enrollment, a virtual enrollment, and then a hybrid enrollment as well, where kids would not be required to wear masks in class, but where they receive in person, it's a mix of in person. But I think that it would be very beneficial for us to step back and take a look at that as well. I know that people are very impressed with the survey that we sent out, but I think that it would be a good idea for us as a district to also take advice from other districts, not just a couple, and see what our parents and staff think about those as well.
So I want to make sure I understand. Are you saying Scott County is allowing students to come without a mask and be in a separate class?
They have 3 reopening plan options. They have a full in-person enrollment, which is traditional school where students are in attendance 5 days a week. They have a virtual enrollment where students may receive off-campus instruction and complete coursework virtually. And then they have a C, which is a hybrid enrollment. Students may receive a mix of in-person and off-campus enrollment, limiting the number of days they will attend in person. And if you're interested in option B or C, they can complete a form to the link. But it says that students are not required to wear masks or face coverings while in class, as long as they remain socially distanced. So I'm not saying that that's exactly what we need, but I think it would be a good idea to take a look at that and to see if maybe that is something our teachers, staff, as well as our parents are interested in having 3 different options. One that includes a hybrid option.
We went through the hybrid model extensively earlier in the meeting and explained why we did not believe it would be a viable option for us. Now again, I've talked to Dr. Hubb on multiple occasions, and I don't recall him sharing that with me. I don't mind to reach out again, but again, I don't know that the hybrid, doing an every other day or every other week situation is viable based on those factors that I shared with you earlier in the meeting. And our plan says too that if you're 6 feet apart, masks won't be required. So
I'm definitely not saying that you haven't researched that, but I am looking at the Anderson County Schools 2020 reopening plan highlights, and they do those 3 options in a hybrid option.
So is it Anderson or Scott?
It's Anderson County Schools 2020 reopening plan highlights.
Anderson County, and I think Bath County, they have both announced hybrid. I'm not sure about the other ones.
So,
They have temperature checks as well. They have athletics and extracurricular activities, attendance. They have different options across those as well.
Allison, just to clarify, is Anderson County doing all three of these options, or are they just asking folks what their preference is?
From
Could
what
you
I
tell?
understand, they're offering those. From what I understand, Sherry, they're offering those three options. I'm not sure if they've completed their survey yet, but those are three options that they have been given. And it does say that this is their opening plan.
Okay, so they're just doing questions at this point, it sounds like?
I don't think so. I think they've announced that they're gonna,
The actual website says that this is their reopening plan highlight.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Danny, I didn't hear you.
it says, I've got the website up as well. It says Anderson County Schools 2020 reopening plan highlights. Option A is full in-person enrollment. Option B is virtual enrollment. And option C is a hybrid enrollment. It says students may receive a mix of in-person and off-campus instruction, limiting the number of days they attend in person.
So they're not gonna be on campus at all for that hybrid model?
No, it says they will be. They may receive a mix of in-person and off-campus instruction, limiting the number of days they attend in person.
But it's not gonna be done in the
So they'll
schools,
show-
the off-campus
yes.
instruction will occur in schools?
15 days.
No, the off-campus is virtual. That's how they're referring to their distance learning. So it's a hybrid option that includes in-person instruction and virtual instruction. Well, the same thing that we were discussing earlier, limiting the number of days that they attend in person.
And the board approved that plan, they're gonna have all three options.
It's their reopening plan highlights on their website.
All right, we'll go through
can I just
options.
ask one more question about masks? So and Grant, let you chime in here. Are we going to have policies? I read somewhere we need policies about those who are in person, but kids who won't wear a mask or having trouble keeping that on, like, because I know, of course, the board will make any policies that we have. Do we anticipate anything like that or any other policies that will be brought to us?
We have been advising Scott and Garrett on that, the same as we have other superintendents. It really is down to following the guidance from the state, and essentially it's applying the same progressive discipline and the same disruption of the educational process rules that you would apply for any other student behavior, that they need to have a space. If students won't comply with the requirement to wear a mask, they would be removed from the classroom to a separate area where there can be enforced social distancing. If the classroom is set up in a way that they can't be, maskless during instruction. We worked through all of that. I'm not really sure there's an ability. We don't have any districts that are presenting new policies for the board to adopt with regard to the mask. It's really a matter of the administration implementing the state guidance in the same way they would if the state board had put out an emergency regulation that just it's already the job of the administration, part of their job descriptions, truly to implement state board regulations, and we've told them just pretend like this state guidance is the equivalent of an emergency regulation. Thou shalt comply and enforce it in good faith and in a reasonable manner, the same as with all of those. So there really isn't anything much for the board to do. I was going to pipe up earlier on the exceptions to the mask requirement if there's medical exceptions.
Sure.
And there are, for any district, there are a lot of requests for accommodation of medical conditions that come across the desk of Ms. Francis and Mr. Wells and the superintendent from employees and students in any given year. And there is just, truly the federal law requires there to be an interactive process, a discussion. You can request more information from a medical provider as to why the particular accommodation or modification of a policy is being requested, why it's necessary for a particular medical condition, and it is a truly individualized discussion with each student or each employee as to what can be done to reasonably accommodate their individual conditions. So most of those things, federal law truly requires it to be individualized. And the most you could do with any type of policy language would just be to say, administrators shall comply with federal law to make reasonable accommodations. That's what your policies already say. So it would be a.
And would we be allowed to notify parents of the other students in the class that there is a child that is not going to be wearing a mask? Or does that fall into the HIPAA privacy realm?
That's one of those things that it's observable by their peers, so there's not much to be shared. You know, that their peers are going to see that a child is not wearing a mask and the teacher's not making them wear a mask. It's the same as with lots of other accommodations that are provided. The teachers have to use their discretion on how to help other kids understand that sometimes kids have special needs that make some rules not apply to them in the same way, but there's not really a basis for communicating anything in particular about that child to family of other children.
But that, I think, kind of hinges on the assumption that all of our kids tell us everything that happens in the course of a day. I have one that does that, one that does not.
I have 3 that are all smarter than me, and none of them tell me what goes on at school.
Yeah. So I guess I'm thinking, just for optimal protection for our students, is it against the rules for them to convey to parents?
Option C is you attend.
It would be problematic to convey that, because by specifically sharing with other families that a student was excused from the requirement, you would be disclosing that that student had some specific medical reason for being excused. So it's obvious to the observer, the same as if a kid had a service animal, but putting any more details than that into writing to convey to other families would be pretty thin ice on how to convey that. Part of our discussion that I've already had with Ms. Francis, Mr. Wells, and the superintendent is if somebody is excused from wearing a mask because of their own medical need, what we've been told is my mask protects you, your mask protects me. So if a particular student can't wear a mask, we do have to look at whether that is posing a danger to the employees and the other students in the room. And one of the exceptions under the Americans with Disabilities Act and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act is if some aspect of your disability poses a direct threat to those around you, co-workers, other students, customers of a business, then that particular accommodation may not be able to be provided to you, which means if some student truly can't wear a mask, they may be involuntarily, so to speak, placed on virtual instruction only because their inability to wear a mask may place the others around them in danger under that direct threat provision of the Americans with Disabilities Act. But each one of those has to be an individualized consideration. So we can't even say that that is a hard and fast rule for all students who can't wear a mask, because if one of those students is in a regular education classroom 100% of the day, that's a different conversation than if one of those students is in one of the special education classrooms with a specialized population, or if somebody else in that room is a more vulnerable student than just the general population. But can't even give you a hard and fast rule that applies to every child who has a medical excuse not to wear a mask.
Well, and I think a lot of those disability things are not surrounding infectious diseases. So, I think as a parent, if you're sending your child to school because your school has told you that everyone will be wearing a mask, and that's why you've chosen this option instead of virtual, and then there's someone who isn't. So I do understand HIPAA completely, but do you know what I mean, Grant? I mean, like, they're having that certain assumption that we're giving them.
Yeah, I understand.
And this is an infectious disease. This is not another kind of problem. So
For schools, for the most part, we're not talking about HIPAA, we're talking about FERPA.
Right.
HIPAA only applies if you are a medical, if you're a medical service provider. But it's the same notion. Go ahead.
I was just going to, just an observation, that parents are going to have to make a very difficult decision about, do I send my children to school or do I keep them at home? And I think it's imperative on us as a board, on Superintendent Hawkins and his team, that before people make that decision, they have to understand what rules are going to be in place at the schools, each of our schools, to protect their children. They're going to have to understand that going back to school will not be going back to the school that they left in March. This will be a different environment altogether. And I think that we have got to convey to the parents through a town hall, through I guess that will be the best venue, what it will be like if you choose to send your kids to school. And what it would be like if you choose to provide your kids with a virtual education. They have to know that before they can make an educated decision. And I think it's imperative on us to give them as much information as possible.
I agree 100%, Ambrose. That is at the heart of the issue. I mean, you are 100% correct. I think the only thing that you left out was that we as a board have to give that guidance to Mr. Hawkins as his team so that he can know which option we're pursuing, so that all those details and all that work can be disclosed and discussed with parents. So we have to provide that guidance. And my understanding was that's what we were doing tonight, because that's what the agenda for the special call meeting is all about. And so I do agree with you.
And it's the chicken and the egg. It's, yes, we need to tell the parents what the rules are, what the decision is, what's going to happen, but we also need to hear from them. And so just by what's happened on Facebook and by adding some public comment tonight, we have raised a lot more questions. In this meeting tonight, I think we've raised a lot more questions that we need to have answered before we present everything. If there was a mix-up on the meetings, I'm sorry, but if we had gone directly to a town hall with no input, I don't know. I'm not going to argue about how this meeting came about. I'll take blame if there's needs to be blame, but I do agree that we have to, there's so many questions. And Mr. Hawkins is correct. There's no way we can even anticipate right now what's going to come up. But there are some things we can come up. I think this mask thing, honestly, if I was told by my school that everybody's wearing a mask and I said, okay, then I'll send my child, and then I found out somebody wasn't. Just things like that. There's so many considerations. It's not an easy answer, but that's a question I'd want. I'd want to know, what's going to happen if I go on fall break, or am I going to have to come home and keep my kids home for 2 weeks? There's just things like that.
But
So there's a lot of questions. We're raising some tonight that we can present later, and I think this is a very worthwhile discussion for that. Point. That I agree that.
I will say that we are prepared to try to address as many of the questions that were brought up over the weekend.
Okay.
As you say, if people go out of town over fall break, that's going to be a state decision on I can't require somebody to quarantine when they come back. Right. That's going to be coming from above us. Because again, we are then dictating where people take trips, and that's not something that we have the authority, I don't think, to do.
But we will have a reporting requirement, so our staff needs to understand. Susan, we know Susan was in Myrtle Beach. We know she's supposed to be quarantined. She showed up at school today. This is our protocol. We take Susan into the office. we call the public health department or whoever, so we are gonna have a part in that, and to make it easy, our staff's gonna be presented with a lot of conflict, I think.
But there's going to be a lot of there's going to be a lot of those situations, Ms. Evelyn, we're not going to know. We're not going to know where every student goes on a trip. I mean, if they go to Gatlinburg over the weekend and that becomes a hot spot, I mean, there's no way for us to know that. And so
there will be some that we do know, and then we will have the responsibility to take action.
So
Alan,
can I get through option 2 here on the virtual, and then we'll try to get through as many of the questions as best we can. The other choice for parents would be the virtual academy. This would be utilizing an online platform. For grades 6 through 12, it would be utilizing Edgenuity. For K through 5, it would be Odysseyware. They are tied to the Kentucky academic standards in the courses that are taught. Students would be expected to demonstrate progress on a weekly basis. This progress would be monitored by the teacher who is assigned to that class, and to ensure that the student is advancing through the curriculum. Additional instructional time for the teacher may be needed. It would be a Woodford County teacher assigned to that virtual classroom. And there would be a requirement for so much communication from that teacher to the students in the virtual academy. Logistics, obviously, you're going to be educated at home. The teacher will be reaching out to communicate with students during the day, during the normal school day. Does that mean the student has to do all their work during the school day? No. They would be able to do that at any point in time. But they would need to be available if the teacher was doing a small group or a whole group instruction, or trying to work with some individual kids on a particular content area. It will require a daily time commitment. These are not easy courses. They will be a challenge, and it's important that you allocate time each day to move through the different courses that you're taking. And again, Virtual Academy teachers will be assigned for lessons, guidance, mentoring, and so forth. We did provide links so that parents would be able to click on a link and actually go through a small little overview of what Odysseyware looks like, and also what Edgenuity would look like. I know there was a question about AP. Edgenuity does offer a number of AP courses. However, if students are going to be taking courses that are not offered through Edgenuity, if they were online, we would look to other providers. The only caveat is that the normal AP teacher may not be assigned to them. It just may not be feasible. Now, it doesn't mean that student couldn't email the teacher from time to time if they need some help or support, but that particular content teacher may not be assigned to them as their virtual instructor, particularly if it's only 1 or 2 students that are signed up for that particular AP course online. The communication, again, it would include virtual meetings, messaging, emails, phone calls. Could be whole group, small group, individual with students. We would expect daily communication with each child at elementary, preschool, middle school level, high school. We would expect that the teacher would communicate with every child at least 2 times per week. That obviously could mean more if the student is struggling and not making progress. But there would be an expectation for at least a couple of times a week communication with every student in each virtual class. Again, when you think about short-term closures, how we would handle if we were to get cases, the health department would notify us. We would work hand in hand with the health department in determining, working with them on the contact tracing, but then also what steps may need to be taken as far as whether it's a particular classroom, particular grade level, particular school. There is no set number that says, okay, if you get this many cases, you're shutting down. It's going to be all done individually working with our local health department. We did believe that it was important if parents choose the virtual model, that if they say, you know, we want to go to in-person, that elementary would transition at a natural break, like fall break, Christmas break, spring break, to make that transition a little bit easier so that the teacher would have the opportunity to kind of see where the student is, but also to make any adjustments to classroom settings. If it's at the middle and high school, we felt like it would need to be done at the semester break. High school in particular, because of credits, having students transition in the middle of a semester is always difficult. And it can be very challenging at the middle school as well. And so we tried to create and you put those in the same category.
Scott, I don't believe you communicated if virtual students want to opt out of virtual and do in-person. What about if in-person students want to opt out of in-person and go to virtual?
They can do that at any time.
Okay. And virtual students will be provided their breakfast and lunch once a week to carry them through the week?
Yes, we would do a food bag just like we've been doing with our feeding program since we closed school back in March.
And those students that the credits they earn virtually would be applied to
yes.
Okay, regular graduation.
Yes.
What about virtual students being involved in extracurricular activities?
That would be a local decision. As long as the virtual academy is a part of the regular high school, that it's not considered part of the alternative program. In other words, we have an online program right now called WAVE. If a student is enrolled in that, that's part of the alternative program. That's a night school. They would not be eligible to participate. But right now, there is nothing in guidelines that would prohibit students from participating. Now, I think we would be wise to ask some questions. Because if a child is fearful about being in the classroom or in school, but are they okay if they're playing football? When you've got a lot more close contact with people and a lot less protection. So I think we've got to be able to have those kinds of conversations. Now, it may be that the student they just do better in a virtual platform. But it would be difficult to use one reason to attend virtually and not apply the same reason to a co-curricular activity, because there would be an opportunity for much closer contact in some of those activities.
Just for clarification, if a virtual student wants to play in athletics, will he or she be able to do so?
I think that's a local decision. There is nothing that would prohibit that. Again, I think you have to look at the individual reasons that were given for the virtual. Because, again, if there was a concern about potentially being exposed to the virus, being in school, those are the questions I think you've got to be able to have with the family. That's all I'm saying.
But when you say local decision, define local decision.
It's a board decision.
Oh, okay.
And I do worry, I understand that a lot of these are individualized cases, but the more that we can outline ahead of time so that we don't, get it, people don't feel like we're using discretion in favor of one person and not another, the better. And as a rule, I think that if a kid has to stay home because, for whatever reason, they're still our student, and if they can go to an activity and feel good about it, that we should always allow, that should be our fallback, is that we're gonna allow them to be with their peers as much as possible.
And I'm not saying don't allow them. I'm just saying, I think that has to be considered. That's all I'm saying.
So are we gonna have some kind of guidelines on that are written, or are we looking at them one by one? I mean, the board wouldn't look at them one by one, I assume.
No, I think you would basically say that, that each situation would be reviewed, but on the surface, there's not anything that would necessarily prevent a student from being able to participate, so long as they were in the virtual academy that was tied to either the middle school or the high school. Now, they would have to be making satisfactory progress just like they would in order to be eligible, those kinds of things. We would have to make sure that we are tracking their attendance, and it's not normal attendance because we're tracking progress on their courses. They would have to meet those eligibility requirements just like they would if they were in the classroom.
Course, yeah. Just like they would have to pass their virtual courses to be able to graduate.
Correct.
Yeah.
Do you like last year we changed our graduation requirements? So are they going to remain what they've always been, and we'll just see how the year goes, and if that's necessary again?
I don't see any reason that we would need to make any adjustments for the coming year.
It'll go back to what it was?
Correct.
Okay. And then also on the virtual, why can't kids who are at home Zoom in on classes? Zoom in and watch their fourth graders, at least be with them that way. Or particularly when we were talking about AP, Zoom in and listen to those lectures and those questions as well. Is that going to be a possibility?
Well, I think the first thing you have to keep in mind is that the virtual students will have a teacher. They will have a teacher who is responsible for that class. And so they will have their own classroom. I think the other thing is that you do have some privacy concerns. If they're zooming in and you have other students who are visible in that classroom while that student is at home. So I do think there are some privacy concerns with that. But again, I go back to, they will have their own class, and the teacher will be working with that class of students in the content that they will be covering. Because the thing you have to keep in mind is that what they're doing in Edgenuity may not match up exactly with that same day in the classroom.
Okay.
So I did get a parent email about this today, and it says that they have a rising third grader at Southside, and they're conflicted about the options, first because the same boilerplate options as nearly every other district in the state, and second because there's a simple change that could be made to not only ensure students stay on a normal curriculum track, but that we're also not asking our teachers and staff to work twice as hard to make it happen. Here in Woodford County, we take pride in being ahead of the curve relative to the performance of most of the Kentucky school districts. But in this case, instead of leading the way with innovation and ideas, it seems that we're content to rubber stamp a mediocre offering prepared by someone else. We can do better, and we should do better. I'm not here to gripe with no alternative to offer, though. We have a way to not only make this work to our advantage during COVID, but also set ourselves up to be a model of modern learning for the future. My proposal is simple in concept. Live stream each classroom and/or teacher for the students whose parents choose option number 2. The benefits are sevenfold. 1, NTI students will get exactly the same instruction as their in-school counterparts at exactly the same time. 2, NTI students will have a nearly identical schedule as their in-school counterparts, which will streamline reentry into regular instruction after the COVID crisis is over. 3, in-school students will be able to maintain the same schedule if the crisis worsens to the point of closing schools again, minimizing the shock of change and ensuring that they maintain the momentum of their progress. 4, it helps ensure that our college-bound students will have a leg up on their competition for college entry due to being current in their curriculum rather than having to catch up after school is over. 5, teachers will only have to teach the material once, which would take immense pressure off the staff versus the current model. 6, establishing the ability to live stream class instruction opens up countless opportunities for the post-COVID educational environment, including the following: the ability to allow students to continue their curriculum through family changes like moves, parent divorces, marriages, illnesses, and even vacations. The ability for teachers to pre-record their instruction in the event of their absence, making the new way to do lesson plans. Establishing a process that can withstand future disasters without skipping a beat. The cost of a good 1080p webcam can be as little as $50 or as much as $200, not factoring in bulk discounts or philanthropy. With approximately 200 classrooms in the district, that equates to a maximum of $40,000 in camera equipment plus hub hardware. This roughly equates to the salary of one full-time certified teacher right out of college. And finally, it sets up Woodford County Public Schools to be at the forefront of an innovative education and keeping us as the best destination for young families in central Kentucky. I'd like to offer my presence to answer questions and further explore the pros and cons of this idea. And it's from Keith Bowers, parent of a Southside student.
Okay. Certainly appreciate that. And we can always look at other options. I do think, and Grant may have to weigh in a little bit on this one, I do think there is a real privacy concern with other students in your live streaming. And it would also mean that the teacher basically has to stay in the front of the classroom if they really want to just see what's going on. Now again, I'm not saying there's not merit to it. It could certainly be something that can be considered. I do think while he indicated it was boilerplate, I do think Edgenuity and Odysseyware is a pretty solid curriculum for students who are going to be virtual. But again, I think the other thing that from a live stream standpoint is the internet capability of the family has to be pretty strong in order to be able to do that for 6 hours a day. If that student's going to be sitting through each one of those classes. So again, just I think some things to consider, but again, certainly a well thought out proposal there.
For sure. Grant, do you want to weigh in on that privacy concern?
I do have that concern as to how you make sure that you're keeping other kids from being visible. The Attorney General's office has even said that voices and things like that would be a readily identifiable characteristic of a student. So you would, to the extent that that is being potentially accessed by other people than just peers in the classroom, you have a potential FERPA issue, privacy issue. My biggest concern on that is how much that increases the gap between the haves and the have-nots, and how much you're requiring every teacher to be now their own IT staff for all the problems that come up during the class period, or you're just going to have to throw your money at more IT people to be tech support for 100% of the teachers during 100% of the school day, to help everybody do live streaming instruction for 6 hours. To me, that just shifts the burden. It doesn't get rid of any existing burden.
Okay. Yeah, because I wondered if it is, with the privacy concerns, we obviously did Google Hangouts with our students at the end of last year, and that was all done, from their home and had their videos on, things like that.
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of it when all of that was happening, including with my own kids, but now that we have more time to plan and try to figure out a method going into it, instead of everybody trying to, what's the phrase, trying to build an airplane in midair. Right now we're planning more deliberately, and I think we ought to plan more deliberately to avoid those concerns instead of welcome those concerns.
This is Sherry. I love thinking outside the box, and I really do appreciate some of the ideas. But I do have a question. How many teachers would be able to teach and manage a full-time class plus teach and live stream video at the same time? I worry that the amount of instructions that kids at home might be getting, or feedback, or grades, or any of those kinds of things. Some of the same issues with the hybrid model, would be kind of concerning there too, so.
And Ryan wants to jump in here real quick on that.
Just because there was reference on the Anderson County model, so I was just curious myself, because again, as we mentioned, haven't heard of a hybrid the way that we've discussed it today. So as I look further into this, they do have the 3 options. The first of which is just like our traditional in school. The difference is the mask. They say that mask will not be used, and I'm looking at what they call their plan highlights. However, and I assume that's what this means, it says mask will not be required while in the classroom, and it says green and yellow. So I'm assuming they're referring to this chart. Their green tier, which means no active community cases of COVID, that's green. Yellow is if the community has 5 or more active cases while there are 0 cases within the school. So obviously they would have to be tracking their cases, and that would, to me, what I'm reading here, would determine mask on or off. They do say that mask, regardless of the color tier, would be required when moving, and I believe on buses. So that's the traditional. The option B is virtual. Sounds much like what we've described here, that, although it doesn't name the platforms or things they use. Why I really wanted to jump in here is how they use the term hybrid. To me, what I read here, it says that they do have a mix. However, it's not full-scale hybrid like we've been talking here. It is basically an individual student, meaning that they would be virtual and then would attend school some days. And it says just if you're interested in that, to fill out the enrollment options form and someone would be contacting you. My first thought is how would you, and I don't know, I'd be interested to hear, how would you manage that if a kid's going to be virtual and then plug in for some days, less than 5, I don't know where they would go, and it seems like you would run into a numbers issue and spacing issue if that were the case. Maybe they already have a plan, I don't know. It does say that their full plan is coming soon. They don't have that on there yet, but I think it's really important to how they are using that term hybrid. It's not the full scale A/B every other week, based on what I'm seeing here on some of their links.
And I have, to follow up to that, I texted their superintendent, and they said hybrid options have not been released as we are still working through those details and we're working with our families. But they did make it clear that teachers would be expected to teach all 3 methods at the same time.
So, just on the hybrid thing, I feel like a number of districts have kind of floated that idea, so I've been, that's kind of a buzzword, and that's why I was curious about, oh wow, they're really going to try to pull this off, but the way they're treating hybrid is a little bit different, well, a lot different than what we've described here.
So the primary difference then would be allowing it on a case-by-case basis, rather than offering it as an option to all of the students.
Yeah,
Dr. Boone, I couldn't hear the end of your sentence there. The very last, you kind of trailed off.
The teachers would be required to teach all 3 methods at the same time.
Wow, okay.
And yes, you fill out an interest form if you're interested in B or C, meaning the virtual or hybrid, and it says that you'll be contacted for more information.
So then, Ryan, would your assumption be that they are offering the same virtual curriculum as they are in person? Because otherwise they couldn't go back and forth between those 2, right?
I can't make an assumption off this. I guess that seems logical, but nevertheless, that would be, I don't know. It would just be hard to plug a kid back in if I don't have a better phrase for it, if they're coming and going. I think that'd be very difficult.
Okay.
And that's that's just surface level what I see here.
Sure. And the other question I was wondering about, so using the different platforms for the online instruction versus in-person instruction, are we able to make sure that all of the same content is being covered so that if we come back to school in in January with no restrictions, are they at the exact same point?
Well, all of the online platforms that we're speaking of are all based on Kentucky academic standards. So the curriculum work that we're doing is developing what are our essential standards and skills, and we want that to match whether that's in classroom or that's virtual. So that on down the line, when a kid, again, plugs back in on down the line, that they should be at the same pace. I'm sure there'll be some variance in that, and obviously there's a great deal of variance in how it's delivered, but that would be the plan to kind of keep those coinciding.
Okay. And I know that Mr. Hawkins has said that you are going to get to questions and that some of these are overlapping, so I'll stop and let you, because some of those same questions are addressed in what I sent in.
Scott, could I ask a couple more questions about the virtual?
Sure.
Is that, what grade levels are going to participate in virtual?
K through 12.
Okay. What about what equipment will we provide to ensure that they can participate in virtual?
If a Chromebook is needed, we would provide that.
What about internet?
Again, we would work with families if they do not have any access at all. That's something we won't know for sure until we kind of see who is interested in it. We are very fortunate that a very large percentage of our families do have internet access. But I've already talked to Mr. Gibson about the possibility of if we need some MiFi devices for the elementary, that may be something that we could provide if it is indeed needed.
Yeah, and I hope that if somebody chooses to go virtual, regardless if they have, we have a lot of people that have internet, but that doesn't make any difference if you're one of those that doesn't have internet. So I hope that if people choose virtual, that we will do everything on our part to make sure that they can be successful in the virtual environment. And,
we certainly will.
And another, some of the parents and grandparents of these children that may choose to go virtual, they may need some assistance in being able to understand and, at least on an elementary level, navigate the system. That because someone's going to have to be responsible, I'm sure, for helping the kindergarten student, the first grade student, know what to do and how to do it. Would we be helping in that area?
I mean, we can troubleshoot. I don't know how many home visits we can make to be able to do it, but we can certainly try to walk people through if they need some assistance. Keep in mind that there will be a teacher assigned to that classroom, to that virtual classroom.
And it's also the beauty of having the one platform with Odyssey Ware and Edgenuity. Kids are going to be familiar with that one platform once they're trained to do it, and the teachers will also be able to troubleshoot it because they're going to be trained to do it.
Which was something we learned coming off NTI. We had a lot of different resources being used, and it was hard for parents, grandparents, what have you at home trying to help students out. So we're trying to streamline that, so to speak. Also, we did talk about within task force of and task force purpose was what supports are necessary, and it's right along the lines of what you mentioned there of how to, I don't know, maybe we need a Google Meet with those grandparents or parents at home just to give them the rundown on how it's going to work. That could be a possibility.
Brian, that your words are very reassuring. I appreciate you saying that, and I'm sure that parents and grandparents, if they're able to hear this, will appreciate that too, because it's that It's exactly the type of attitude we as board members and administrators are going to have to use to make this work. The superintendent began this evening by saying, these are unprecedented times. And, when I think about the lieutenant governor and her task force, Kevin Brown and Commissioner Brown and all of his employees, Scott Hawkins and all of you around the table, we're going to have to show grace to everybody and understand that we don't have all the answers and understand that there will be some missteps. But if we can use that attitude just displayed by Mr. Asher in trying to do the best we can to make it work, I feel very comfortable that we can do it. But we're going to have to show grace. We're going to have to do it.
All right, I think we've kind of gone through, and I know a couple of questions centered on ETC. We do plan on having ETC after school. Now, it may not be as large a program as it has been in the past, because they do have to be in groups of 10. And so there will be some limitations on the full number we can serve, and families will need to sign up to be full-time. Because again, we need to be able to know which kids are going to be there. And so while I know that we've been able to allow drop-ins a lot in the past, people are going to have to sign up for a full-time slot this year so that we can plan accordingly, since we do have those restrictions on groups of 10. So again, final numbers, typically, we've had larger numbers at Southside and Huntertown, smaller numbers Simmons and Northside, and we will certainly work to try to accommodate as many students as we can. But there will be a program after school. It's going to look different, just like everything else, than it has in the past.
And I assume with that, you'll have to do assigned seating again to ensure contact tracing.
Yeah, and they'll probably be in one classroom or in one room.
Oh, okay.
Now, they can still go outside and do some things, but they're not going to probably be moving around like they have in the past as part of the after-school program, because we do want to try to maintain where students are. So, all right, we'll try to answer questions.
Okay. Do you want to, I guess one of the things that I think is important was not so much submitted as a question, but more as feedback. And that is, can you explain to parents how different the day is going to look? I don't want people to have the expectation that their kids will still have the same type of school day and be surprised at the limitations. Can you talk a little bit about the one area of feedback about, we can't do circle time and things like that, especially for our younger kids? It's going to be a different type of day for them.
It will be. Obviously, small groups will look different than they have in the past. They may be smaller groups as they work with students. There won't be the carpet on the floor in front of the whiteboard, because they've asked us to remove all of that. But as far as classroom instruction, they're going to see good quality classroom instruction just like they have in the past. They're going to be more in that particular classroom during the day than they would have been in the past. As I said, special areas will more than likely come to them. PE, we still want to utilize PE in the gym. They're still going to go outside for recess. And again, we hope that, in the very near future that we would be able to open up the playground equipment. I think we just want to figure some things out when kids go outside initially. And I think I don't think that'll take a real long period of time, but I think we need time to figure that out. They're going to go to the cafeteria. That's our hope, to be able to do lunch. Their breakfast is going to be more than likely in the classroom. We want to try to make the day as much like it used to be as possible. knowing that it's going to be some different. Middle and high, they're still going to change classes. They are, the traffic pattern in the hallways is going to be different. Smaller groups in the cafeteria, again, for lunch. But again, our goal is to try to make it as much like it was as we can.
Okay. Looking at our middle and high school students, will they have, if the parents choose virtual, will they have 8 virtual teachers because they have 4, just looking at like gold and black days, or will they have 1 that's coordinating all of their instruction?
We won't be able, I can't answer that until we get numbers.
But it certainly wouldn't be 8. It wouldn't be that many.
Now, I don't think they would have 8 teachers, more than likely, because I don't know that we would have enough. Again, it may be, if a science teacher may be teaching multiple science areas. So again, it might not look, exactly, because again, some of it's going to depend on certification, some of it, and I think we're going to have a little bit of flexibility with that. But again, I don't know that we can answer that explicitly how many teachers they're going to have until we see some numbers and how it would coordinate with the teachers who are more interested in doing the virtual model.
Sure. And the minimum number of contacts per week being only 2, that seems...
And that could change. Again, I think that's the initial, and part of that was based on how we've handled our night school program for mostly high school kids, is that there is a couple of times per week where they are checking in initially to see how they're doing, the progress that they're making. If we need to do more, we can come back and we can add in more. But again, that was based on the model where we've been utilizing the WAVE program for the last couple of years.
Which we considered that, and it's in the one bullet in the upper left, that additional instruction time may be needed to support progress. So, based on their progress, it may be just 2 times for one certain student or a group of students, and it may be more for students who are not making that progress or need extra support to make that progress.
Okay. So we can just, I guess, go through these.
Any that we haven't addressed already. I know a number of the comments were about the hybrid model, and I think we've talked about that. And again, just not certain that is a real viable consideration, although I understand why people would think that would be really, really good.
Okay. So what happens if 80% of people choose in person? Will there be enough space for social distancing?
Unless it's 50%, there won't be enough space for social distancing. I mean, that's just, if you're talking about 6 feet, and unless you only had half the students, I don't know that you would be able to get 6 feet apart. So when you say social distancing, are you meaning 6 feet?
Well, I think, is there a minimum number of feet that you're trying to keep? Have there been any recommendations on that?
Well, if you look at from the American Academy of Pediatrics, they said at least 3. Anywhere from 3 to 6 feet with masks. So
right,
obviously you would want to try to get 3 feet as much as possible, at least 3 feet. We went and looked at some classrooms today, and we believe that we could get 23, 24 kids in a classroom and still maintain about 4 to 5 feet apart if it's spaced out right.
Wow, okay.
And was that about right? 23? 22, 23?
Depending on the room,
Yeah.
we were a range of 22 to 24, I feel like. I'm sorry.
In every school?
No, that was the high school and the middle school, because we were those have larger class sizes, cap sizes anyway. The elementary,
and we just some other challenges, because right now they have smaller tables than what you see here. So how to configure that'll be a challenge we have to work through. So I don't know that we were able to set a number as well to our elementary classrooms, but because we got the furniture consideration. But nevertheless, should be, from what we laid out, in the 2022 range.
Is there a KDE calculator? Do I remember reading that? That you put in the square footage and it tells you how many students can safely be in that?
There is, but it goes from, it only takes, it only calculates though based on the percentage of the square feet, I think. I don't think it takes you all the way wall to wall. I don't think. Now I may be wrong about that, but again, you know, what we've tried to do is go in and configure the furniture that is in there right now to be able to do that.
Okay. Will performing art classes, choir and band specifically, still be an option at the middle and high school level?
We're still waiting on final guidance as it relates to the music classes. Obviously, when you sing, it can create more of the droplets, and also with the band. I think orchestra should be okay, but again, we're still waiting. They said it'd be another week to 2 weeks, I think, before we got final guidance on what that would look like. Now, it may just mean that you sing in mask if you're in a chorus class, you know. So, and we may try to spread out more than we normally do, but we're still waiting on the guidance.
Okay. If they have students who vary on which option they would like to do, can they split up? Can their oldest child be in virtual and youngest in person?
Yes.
All right. Is there, well, that's the next thing. If working virtually, will there be specific times of day that students will be able to listen, or can they use flexible timing?
There will be flexibility, but the teacher will be checking in with the kids during the school day. And that was something that the teacher would coordinate with the kids.
Okay. Are you able to post the links to the virtual curriculum program student experience videos?
They are posted, I believe. There are a couple links in the document.
Okay. Will face shields be acceptable?
According to the Department of Health, no. It must be a mask.
Okay.
Do we know the rationale for that?
They said it doesn't cover completely underneath the mouth. Is the reason that the Department of Health folks shared with us.
Okay.
This person says they definitely like that the parents can choose. Their questions or concerns are whether or not the teachers have an option, and we've discussed that. How will the mask rules be enforced? Is it punitive measures?
And I think the thing we want to try to do is make it part of our culture. Each school will put it as part of their PBIS system, and that's what we want to encourage and reward the good behavior. Obviously, you want to deal with it if it's not being followed, but we want to try to treat it like we would anything else in terms of expected behavior in the classroom.
Okay. One question that several people submitted was, how will we handle IEPs in each of the options?
I mean, it wouldn't change anything in the in-person. I mean, those students would be serviced as they always have been. I think on the virtual model, you know, that we would staff it accordingly to be able to provide the supports with the special education teacher in order to meet the IEP.
As on the thought that it wouldn't change anything, how will we handle speech therapy with masks?
We are purchasing plexiglass that would go in between the student and the speech pad.
Perfect. Do you anticipate that the virtual learning will be the same number of hours as a typical instruction day or less?
It depends on the student. But there will be a time commitment that would be necessary in order to progress through the content.
I know that we have some bus drivers that are single parents that take their children on the bus. Will their temperatures be taken at the bus garage?
If they will be taken before they load the bus.
The bus drivers that are single parents whose kids ride the bus with them, they'll take, the bus driver themselves will take their own child.
It would be the monitor who's on that bus.
Are you thinking that we're gonna have to modify our absence policy so that if a child is exposed and has to quarantine for a specific time, and then the same thing happens again the next month, how will we handle student absences and staff absences as well?
I don't know that for our students, if we'll deal with that first, and Garrett can chime in. Obviously, if a child is required to quarantine, that would be a doctor's statement. And that one doctor statement would cover all of the absences. So it wouldn't eat into parent notes. It wouldn't eat into anything else. That would be one statement.
So if our kids are exposed at school, then we're assuming they will contact their doctors and get a doctor's note to cover that?
If they are required to quarantine based on the health department's guidance, they would be, that's like a doctor's statement, because the health department is saying,
We're just administratively excused.
yeah, I mean, that would not eat into parent notes or anything along those lines.
Okay,
And
what
so-
did Garrett say? I couldn't hear him, I'm sorry.
I said that would be an administrative excuse if they're required to quarantine in that specific situation. In my opinion, I don't believe we change our policy per se. I've had some conversations with our district social worker who works with truancy. I've had some conversations with our Infinite Campus person. I think there's maybe some things in practice I think we'll do differently. I mean, our intent is by no means to make anything COVID or coronavirus related a truancy issue. We don't want to do that at all. And so there will be some, again, how we apply the policy might look a little different. For example, when someone gets 3 unexcused absences or tardy, there's an automatic letter that gets generated and sent out. You know, we're going to do that a little differently this year. Those aren't going to be automatically sent out. We're going to take each one of those by case, work with those families to try to determine if it's really a truancy issue, if it's more of coronavirus related. So there's some things in practice that we will change. I don't personally think we need to change our policy though.
Okay, thank you. And how about staff absences for the same thing? How will we handle sick days if they're being required to quarantine?
Yeah, if it's again required to quarantine, there is federal medical leave that can be applied in those particular situations where it wouldn't require the staff member to utilize any of their own leave days. So that is an option if that were to happen. The other thing too is that if they have to quarantine, more than likely that classroom would go online. And so if they are able to still instruct while they're at home, then they would never take any leave.
Okay, and the FMLA days, are those paid or unpaid, or would they still be having to use their sick days?
Yeah, it depends. It depends on the reason. If it's an FMLA qualifying reason, it certainly can be paid, potentially even up to 12 weeks.
And without using their sick time?
Correct.
Okay.
Depending on the specific reason for the leave, yes.
So, like we said, if they were having to quarantine because of a cluster in their classroom or something like that, they could then apply for FMLA, and then if they had to do it again, I don't think, is there a limit on the number of times you can use FMLA in a year?
It's up to 12 weeks.
But you can use it you could use it more than one time. You don't have to
Correct.
do it all.
Although the specific federal legislation that was passed related to the coronavirus, that it expires December 30th. So absent the federal level or our state legislature making any additional changes, granting any additional leave, that the paid portion of that federal leave expires December 30th.
Okay, then will we have a plan in place, or are we just gonna have to wait and see what they do?
I think we need to wait and see. Hopefully the legislature will probably act upon that. They did this past spring when we were dealing with it. And I think that's something, if we see it as a need, we can certainly advocate for that as we move into the legislative session in January.
Okay. Have we made any plans for freshman orientation?
I can't answer that right now. So
Okay. This one we've covered with doing the town hall before the decision is made. During a normal school year, smaller children sometimes have a slight fever due to minor bugs. My question is, if they were to have a slight fever and not be able to attend, what will be the requirements for re-entry? Would they be required to go to the doctor, and would they be required to submit a negative COVID test to re-enter?
actually, that was discussed this afternoon on our superintendent advisory committee. And we asked that very same question to the Department of Health. They're going to issue us final guidance on that. But right now, now this is not final, but what they are saying is that a child would have to be fever-free for 72 hours in order to return. But that is not in writing yet.
Okay.
The thing is, I don't think we can require that they get a test. That's not something, just like in flu season. We can't require kids get a flu test to make sure they're negative before they can come back to school.
Right. But
This could be an exception.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right, go ahead, Danny, I'm sorry.
Is the virtual model self-paced, and are there live lessons?
Yes.
Mastery learning. Yeah.
There are live lessons.
That would be, as we referenced the teacher meeting time, that would be considered the live lesson.
There are videos
And
though.
But yeah, there are
teacher
videos as well.
quality.
And to answer your other question, it is self-paced.
Okay. How will gifted students be challenged in the online setting?
You want to take that?
Sure. There are extensions within Edgenuity, within Odyssey-ware. Also, it is very much differentiated to where you can, for lack of a better term, kind of test out of given skills and move along the progression. Have some preliminary conversations with Ms. Kaysen. This is also part of our task force where our special population, so she's included in that, of what other ways we might be able to accommodate for that. But those would be the initial things as related to the online platform.
Okay. Next one is a calendar question. Do you have, I don't think we do, but do you have projections on the percentage of parents that will choose each option?
No.
Just have our survey results.
And we said that students that choose or virtual classes will not be excluded from any sports clubs, teams, band, orchestra, chorus.
Again, there's no reason to exclude them.
We've talked about the playground. There's a question about sanitizing that. Can you describe mask breaks and how do those not defeat the purpose of wearing masks at all?
Well, I think that's going to be left up to the individual teacher to determine how they best can do that within the classroom. But it's to be able to give students a little bit of a break, to take it off. Obviously, they would need to be able to stand up and kind of move to the point where they are 6 feet apart. And again, just allow them to take the mask off for a few minutes, get a little bit of a break, and then we'll go back at it.
Okay. Will PPE be provided to teachers?
Yes.
How will we clean between classes in the high school and still have teachers monitoring the classes as they change to ensure that they're maintaining their distance?
Yeah, and I think the thing on that one, it's going to be all hands on deck. And that may mean that we ask students to wipe down their desk before they leave. And I don't think that there's anything necessarily wrong with that. We clean up after ourselves in any other situation. And if we provide the wipes, because right now there is no way that you could have the number of custodians clean 65 classrooms in a 6-minute period between classes. It's just not physically possible. And but I don't think that there's any issue with asking kids to be able to say, take this wipe and wipe down a desk that's 24 by 24, and to wipe down your seat and throw the Clorox wipe away as you leave. You know, again, it's going to take all of us. You know, I think Governor Beshear has said it multiple times. We're all in this together. And I think that's going to be part of what we have to do.
All right. Are there any additional safety measures for our teachers who are being exposed to so many kids? Can we provide additional testing for them on any sort of a regular basis?
I don't know that the school district can provide testing. Obviously, if employees want to do that, they can. My understanding is all tests right now are free. So there would be no cost to them, but and I don't know if the health department might work with us to be able to do it on site. I don't know. That's not a conversation we've had. They may not have the staff to be able to do that right now. But again, with their proximity being so close, I feel like they would probably work with us or put us in contact with who could work with us if staff wanted to do that.
Okay, yeah, I think that's mentioned a few times in here, especially for our middle and high school teachers who are going to come into contact with so many students. Would all assessments or evaluations be in an online format for virtual academy students?
Assessments or?
Like, I think they're asking, are all tests or evaluations be in an online format?
Yes, yes, I believe
I'm
they
not
would.
sure what they mean by evaluations, but
Yeah.
but test would be yes.
Well, I think maybe, and I'm speculating here, but it may be if like foreign language, when they do the tests, a lot of it's speaking to
Yeah,
and
so it
from
could
the
be
teacher to see
virtual.
if they
It
can-
wouldn't have to be multiple choice or written.
But like in
But
this
you
format,
could do like one-on-one teacher conversation with the student virtually.
You could do that, is that what you said?
Yes, we will have a
Yeah.
teacher assigned to, that's why we will have the teacher assigned to those classes. So even the little bitty kids with reading, they could read to the teacher and the teacher could assess that way.
And for our ESL students that sign up for virtual, do we offer those programs different languages?
Yes.
yes, they themselves have built-in options for that. And then again, just depending on numbers of how much support we would need.
Can I jump in for 1 second, Danny?
Yes.
When we're talking about assessments, you know, we've put a lot of work, and I know how effective common assessments are across the district to determine that, you know, kids are getting the same content, understanding, and all that, and how much we use that, are we going to still use that for virtual kids so that we get those to them periodically too, so that we do know that they are understanding those concepts that are in the common assessments for each grade?
Well, potentially. And I say that because we had this discussion of adjusting our pacing guides and our curriculum maps. And right now, I'm more focused on establishing just what those essential skills and standards are, because all of these logistics we're talking about are very much going to affect our pacing. So for us to develop an assessment that we might give in October, I don't think we can do that just yet. So possibly.
So will the virtual students take the same common assessment that the in-person do at some point once it's developed, instead of just doing what's on the online curriculum?
If we develop those, then yes, they could. We even, I mean, through our Schoology platform, we could even administer those to the virtual academy students. But still, as far as our assessment calendar, we honestly have put it on hold because of the reasons that I mentioned.
Right. But I know that that's a good standard that we've used to make sure everyone's on track. So I would hope that the virtual students would take that as well, so that we know, even though we're not,
Right. It's
they're in a different place, that they're still getting
Yeah,
personal training.
very doable, regardless if you're virtual or in person. But again, just to be determined at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Debbie, could I ask a question, please?
Please do.
Okay, back to the virtual. You know, there are grandparents and parents who have 100% valid reasons for not sending their children to school. They just can't. You know, and I don't want them, I think we all realize that last year our NTI program was the very best that we could be, but it wasn't the best virtual learning environment. And this is completely different than what we did last year. How do we help parents and grandparents understand that, look, if you all have valid reasons that you can't send your kids to school, this is not like last year. This is something that your children can learn from. Your children will move forward. Your children will progress. Your children won't get left behind. There's no reason there's no reason not to allow them to do this if there is a reason not to go. The information that Miss Bradley sent, one of the things that stuck out to me was there was a parent who, for some reason or another, her child was able to take art history on Ingenuity, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes, I saw that comment. Yes, we all did. Okay.
The parent raved about how much that student learned about art history. She even went on, he or she went on to say, I took the class with my child and I learned a lot I didn't know. What can we do, Ryan or Scott or Dr. Jones or anybody, to allow our parents to know that this virtual is a viable option for them? Can we have things like workshops where they can come in and see what their child will learn? They will see how it would operate so that they can make a decision that's best for them. Have we thought about that?
Well, we did include links for them to be able to see what a lesson would look like. We can certainly try to provide as much information about Edgenuity as possible.
You know, and I think it's important that, I don't know if you want to call it workshops, I don't know if you want to call it appointments, whatever it is, but to allow the individuals who are making decisions about their child's education to understand that this is a good option. You know, I appreciate that a link will help if you use the link, but there may be people who really want a deeper understanding of this before they make a decision. And I think we need to go out of our way, and I'm not raising my voice any other way than I'm trying to express myself. We need to ensure that these people, that our community who cannot send their kid to school understand that this is a viable option that their children can. I'm not going to say it is as good as in-room instruction, but they won't fall behind. Does that make sense, Ryan, what I'm trying to say?
It does, and that was our goal and why we chose such platforms. But at the same time, too, that was a good experience for that one particular student. That's going to vary by student. I don't know that my own son would do very well in all virtual like that. But ultimately, to answer your question, I think the link is a starting point because it is a video about the student experience. I had one high school teacher who, part of our task force, mentioned, could we get what I would call a sandbox account to where potentially, and I don't know if that's a viable option, if the company is able to do that, but they could get in there and click around to try to experience that. We'll give them as much as we can. I don't know that they would be able to fully assess until they get all the way into it to really have that kind of feedback that we got from that other parent who took the art history class, or student, I should say.
I'm going to continue to offer ideas about what I think we can do to help those people make informed decisions. And I appreciate, Ryan, your effort to help. This is my last question. One of the things that has kind of surprised me, well, not surprised me, but many of my constituents really believe, Scott and Ryan and Dr. Jones, that a hybrid system is a real thing. I mean, they honestly believe that it is an option. But from what I understand from Mr. Hawkins and the team sitting around that table, that hybrid is not an option. I'm asking.
That you are correct.
It is not an option.
It is not an option that we believe we can implement successfully.
That's what I mean. Yes. Okay.
Or would it be best for a number of our families and a number of our teachers and classified staff? So I want to quantify that too, because we have a number of people that would not be able to work, a number of families that would not be able to work because they don't have childcare or someone to help their child with the work. And we have a number of staff who are in that same boat.
Okay. And to your knowledge, there's no other district that's doing hybrid.
Not the way that it has been described this evening, and every other day. Now, if there is, let me know. I'll be happy to reach out to them to see how they're going to do it.
But this is the last comment, last question for me. Did I understand you to say that if you did go hybrid, a hybrid approach, that it would be everybody would have to do it and there would be no virtual option?
No, I didn't say that.
Okay, all right. All right, so if we had the hybrid, we still could do a virtual. If there was such a thing as hybrid. Okay, thank you.
Allison, were you trying to get in?
No, I wasn't, but I would like to say just really briefly that I really wholeheartedly appreciate Ambrose's point of view on all of this. He is our senior board member. He's been around through so different, I mean, certainly not a pandemic. I know that, I understand that, but Ambrose has been here with us for so many years, and I appreciate everything that he says. I think that people do reach out to him, they respect his point of view, and I respect it as well. So, I think what Ambrose puts out there, we really need to take into consideration, not just because it's just Ambrose, but because as a senior board member and someone who has put so many years into the Board of Education and so many countless hours in Woodford County, we definitely need to listen to him, and so does Scott and his committee. We need to listen to him and get his point of view and respect it and really think in it, and really put deep thought into that.
Okay, thank you. Danny, did you have more questions? I think, were there still some more on the list?
Oh yeah, there's a lot more on the list. And maybe the most viable thing is putting together a FAQ type document that could be shared on the district website so that people who aren't watching this would have access to the information.
Yeah.
I mean, we've somewhat started that, but that's got 100 questions on it. I mean,
Yeah, but I kind of divide up in categories, but let me just say, I have one thing, and then let's just talk about what we want our path forward to be tonight. You know, I know that preschool and kindergarten are accepted from masks.
that is correct.
Did we consider at all having half-day kindergarten?
Going back to half-day kindergarten? No, we
didn't
never
have half the kids because they're not going to have masks.
we never considered going back to half-day kindergarten.
So there will be some kids in kindergarten who are virtual.
Possibly, yes.
They choose.
If they
And what
choose
about
that.
preschool?
Preschool?
And saying preschool, is there, I mean, I wasn't even clear that, did we do a virtual preschool last year?
We did. We offered NTI, yes.
Okay. All right. So I know there was some confusion. I've heard two things. Mr. Hawkins, you want a town hall? I absolutely agree. I guess you said once tonight that you wanted to, or maybe Sherry did, have a decision before the town hall, but it makes more sense to really hear. Danny's done a great job collecting all these comments and input, but probably we need an opportunity to give people to speak again and even digest. I think this is such a big deal, but probably one meeting was not going to do it because we all have a lot to digest tonight just from our conversation. So how do we want to go forward? Do we want to table this vote on the reentry plan, schedule a town hall as soon as we can?
Can I just clarify for a minute? So we have an agenda item to determine the reentry model. Mr. Hawkins, it sounds like you and your team have a recommendation. Could you just share that with everyone so that everyone in the community is clear? I think a lot of times you have people posting on Facebook saying things that conflict with what other people are saying. And so I think it's really important that the board advisor kind of advise us and let us know exactly what your recommendation is tonight. And then my other point would be that I definitely think a town hall would be valuable, but I do think that just to put out, different options and answer every question that everyone has that might just be specific to their family and not really a general question that's helpful to others isn't necessarily, I'm not sure if that's necessarily a good use of time. So I guess if you don't mind, just let us know what your recommendation is and the recommendation of the task force that's been meeting weekly. And I understand a lot of that has to do with the guidance from the state and from the CDC, and those are not things that you can change or play with. So if you don't mind to just do that, please.
Sure. Our recommendation is to go with the dual system, which would allow parents a choice of either their children returning in-person school or to pick the virtual model. So that would be our recommendation, not just mine, but the entire team. And that is a unanimous recommendation, is the dual system. I think we believe that's what's best for kids. It gets them back in our classrooms. It also follows the guidance of the American Academy of Pediatrics, which they normally don't take that strong a stand in terms of a recommendation. And so that is our recommendation, is to provide parents a choice of either in-person or virtual.
And then my other question is, do you have, it looks like later on the agenda, there are some positions and there are some, some real planning things that you have to do that are time sensitive as far as school starting back. Can you talk a little bit about the need to have a decision, or if you think that's important?
Well, it would be really helpful, and the reason that I added the creation of new positions, I thought there was going to be a decision this evening, and if it was to move forward with the dual system, that we would need to go ahead and move forward trying to hire some additional bus monitors. And then that gives us just as much time as possible to get those positions posted and try to get them filled before the beginning of the school year. So we did want to try to move on that if that decision had been made in terms of our reentry.
How would you know, how many bus monitors you need until you know? Because I assume when people register or when they fill out the next survey, you'll also be asking them if they're planning on riding the bus.
That is correct.
So,
We were going to post and just do it up to 20. And then whatever the need was to ensure that every bus route had a monitor, that's the number that we would select.
so it could be less than 20.
It could be less than 20, yes, but yeah, I think we also need to keep in mind that it would give us an opportunity to find available subs as well, because obviously you'll have monitors that get sick during the year, and you need to ensure that you have people to cover those. So.
Okay, so Mr. Huggins, let me just be clear tonight. So did you anticipate that we would make this decision and then have a town hall?
I anticipated, yes, that you would make a decision, and then the town hall would be to further clarify, answer questions, particularly about the two models, so that parents then could make an informed decision about how they wanted their child to return to school. So
Okay,
that was...
Because I was confused at the beginning of the meeting. It made it sound like,
No,
you know, I scheduled this meeting and people were upset that we didn't do the
No,
town hall
we
first,
were-
but this
we were
was
trying
your
to move-
idea.
we were
Okay.
just trying to move as quickly as we could, but I think
Right,
if...
and we were, so
if
that's why
the
we
board-
suggested 6, then I
And
went
again,
for it.
My thought was, we presented two options. You have the all virtual, which means we don't go back to school in person, or you've got the dual system.
Okay,
And our recommendation is the dual system, and we would respectfully ask that you approve that recommendation. And then the town hall, we could specifically answer questions about the in-person and about what the virtual model would be, much like we've done this evening.
So at any rate, are all of these starting back on the August 26th date?
I mean, for the calendar option, yes, our recommendation is to look at that calendar amendment that we had sent to you.
Thank you.
no matter what option. Is that what you're asking, Allison? No matter what option, it would still be the 26th?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And then I just have a quick question. I know Ryan was talking a little bit earlier when he looked up the model for Anderson County, and it sounded like they may be doing you can submit an individualized request if you are interested in a hybrid model. Is that something that we could possibly look at doing, or is that just something that the task force really feels strongly that it's a big system, it's not going to work, but is that something that might be individualized? It's just a question.
I think, and I think Ryan said this earlier, I think it would be very difficult for just a student to pop in every so often. That they're primarily doing virtual, and then they come for a day or two, and then they go back on virtual. And that's the way that appeared to be, that there wasn't a set schedule or a set system to it. I think that would be very difficult on the student. I think it would be really hard on the teacher.
Thank you.
Okay. First of all, I do want to say, I'm not sure what we're going to do right now with this. If we're going to table it, we're going to vote on it. But I do want to thank, what Ms. Bradley posted on Facebook was public record. And if we decide to vote on this tonight, her post would have been the only feedback we had, except for the few public comments we had. So I think it's been extremely helpful, and it has been for me. So,
And
does
Debbie,
anybody want to make a motion that we, go ahead, Sherry.
one quick concern, it might be a good idea to not schedule these really important meetings and on a holiday weekend with really no notice. It might be a better idea to schedule these meetings, and really all of our meetings, when there can be adequate notice published in the newspaper, and so that people can have a really good idea about what's going on, so that we are transparent. I just feel like very strongly about that. I know Mr. Wilson in the past had always tried to make sure that we scheduled things so that you could have at least a week's notice so that it could appear in the paper and people could have an understanding of what was going on and have an ability to comment and have input. But that being said, I would make a motion that we follow the superintendent and task force recommendation.
Well, I'll second that just because I want to say a couple more things. First of all, I want to be clear, what did the task force, what was their subject matter? Because I think you sent an email, Mr. Hawkins, that the only thing the task force really discussed or decided upon was the curriculum.
Their focus was on the supports needed for students as they return to school, whether it be academic, whether it be academic, whether it be social, emotional, or special population. Now, did we run some ideas by them because it was a wide group of people to get their thoughts and opinions and answer questions? Absolutely. You're going to take advantage of a really sharp group of people who can provide you some feedback and input, particularly because they represented every school in the district. And so we felt like they provided valuable insight if we ran something by them to say, no, it's probably not a good idea. And so they were a great sounding board, but they didn't make recommendations in terms of the re-entry.
Okay. And that was the committee that had some parents on it. So
correct.
And
yes,
as far
and
as
let Ryan talk about that just for a second.
Mr. Hawkins suggested the 6th. I totally agree. Neither one of us thought about the 4th. We'll be more careful next time. So anyway, we have a motion and a second.
Hang on just a second. I think Ryan wanted
I just
to say
wanted to
something
add
about
on the,
that.
Okay, go ahead, Ryan.
on the task force piece, it was always open discussion. So even though we weren't more so along the lines of logistics, that was still on their mind. And if they asked the question, we would answer, we would discuss. So there was always back and forth discussion each and every week that we had those meetings. So it informed this plan as well as all kinds of other logistics. And as you know, there's no shortage of questions in this process.
I know. Well, I was just confused because Mr. Hawkins had sent us an email when I think somebody had asked that those meetings be
video
put on the internet, and he said, well, all they have to do with the task force's curriculum. So that was my confusion. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Just
Mr. Wilson?
the recommendation is by the superintendent and his cabinet, people sitting around that table. And it is to adopt this plan for reopening, which would be virtual or in person. We would have a town hall to fully explain what the virtual is, what the in person is, answer questions, and then after the town hall, parents, grandparents, guardians would have to make a decision if they were going to enter virtual or in person. Is that what I'm understanding is kind of where we progress from here? I see Scott shaking his head. Does that mean yeah?
You have provided an excellent summary there, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you. Okay.
I will say, in discussion on this, I'm not ready to vote that these are the only two options tonight, given that we've only given parents a couple of days for feedback, and I would advocate for having a town hall as quickly as we can. And I understand that we scheduled this meeting quickly to try and give everyone as much planning time as they could possibly get. But I don't want to rush what is probably the most important decision that we will make as board members. I just don't feel comfortable, given that we're dealing with a pandemic and that we've had such a limited time to look at everything. I hate to vote against the options. It would be my preference that motion I would rather have a motion to table this until we can get more feedback from our staff, from our parents, rather than voting down the work of a committee that I very much appreciate.
All right, Grant, we have a motion, and now it seems we have a motion to table inside of the motion. Can we go to the motion to table first?
Motion. Yeah, has anybody seconded that motion?
I'll second it.
No, Debbie seconded the first motion.
Oh, I second, okay. Allison, does anybody want to second the motion, Danny's motion to table?
I'll second.
Allison?
Mr. Chenoweth, just as a quick clarification, so I made a motion, Debbie seconded, and then Danny made an opposing motion and Allison seconded, and so that's what.
It's not an opposing motion because it's not to reject the proposal, it's to table that for further discussion. So it's a parliamentary procedural motion to just not have the vote on the first motion yet.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
Do you anticipate coming up with an additional option?
Who are you asking?
I'm asking the board because as we've met and dealt with this over the last 6 weeks, as I've talked to superintendents across the state, it's a dual system, it's virtual. So unless we think that there's going to be some other option that could be considered, I think for the sake of us being able to begin to plan and do what we need to do, and to give ourselves a chance to do, as Mr. Wilson said, have a town hall to be able to answer questions so that parents can make decisions. Because if we do the town hall and then we have to schedule another meeting, and then we have to send out we just added about a week and a half that we've taken away from us being able to prepare and move forward. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but we need every day we can get to be prepared for this coming school year. So again, if there's not another option that could potentially come forth, I guess I'm struggling, especially when the guidance from the medical profession is we need our kids back in school. So.
Well, I tell you, my own presentation is just the overwhelming desire to look at a hybrid. And I know you don't think it's feasible. Curious about Anderson County. I guess they're greater than us if they put that on their website and they're not really doing it. But that's kind of the only option I can see coming forward, because it really seems that our community, which we've just heard all year, we've got to listen to, and we've held numerous forums on other issues. You know, just did we really look and see if anyone else is doing that?
And again, I'll just put it on the table that we spent a great deal of time over the last 6 weeks, and if you can tell me how to figure out the child care issues for our staff and the child care issues for a large number of our families who have to go to work, I'm open to that, because I think that's extremely problematic, especially for our staff.
Go ahead.
I think that our staff definitely needs to be involved in this. I mean, I think there needs to be a very detailed survey sent to our staff, asking them how they look at the reentry of our students. And I think that needs to include them as parents as well. And I don't think that we've done that. I definitely think that Mr. Hawkins and his committee have done work. I just think that this is a broad view of what we've been told as board members. There's 5 of us, and we've all been bombarded with all of these questions and suggestions. And, I think we've done a great job of getting that out there to our community. I think that I think it's a good thing. And if it's another week, It's one more week. I understand that time is of the essence. I'm a parent of a school student as well, but I definitely think that we need to let their voices be heard on this, just like every other issue that we've addressed.
Well, and I think we did listen to our teachers.
Need to be heard. And
Right.
I don't think this is the exception. I don't think there is an exception with this.
And again, our plan was based on the survey results that we received. So, again, I will, and the teachers said very clearly that they want to come back to school, and they said very clearly that the biggest issue for them would be childcare. So,
I respect your response, but I also, from the feedback that I've gotten, I feel like that some staff and parents feel like that there weren't enough, and I understand that we can't satisfy everyone, I understand that. But I do have a large response, a large communication with people in our community who feel like that their concerns were not heard, and I think that we need to hear those. We've heard them on every other topic that we have addressed, so I don't think that we need to stop here. That's just my opinion, but I appreciate the work that you all have done. I know we're not going to satisfy everyone.
Grant, I just have a quick procedural question. So the board meeting was scheduled from 6 to 9 p.m. and it's now after 9 p.m. Does that matter?
Open Meetings Act only covers the starting time of a meeting,
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to double check.
and then generally the question of convenience to the public, but that's pretty loosely defined by the court and the Attorney General's office. So it's not midnight, and I think 9:05 is still relatively convenient. On the other parliamentary procedure question you all raised, you all have not adopted Robert's Rules of Order. Quite frankly, you don't have, and most boards don't have any particular procedural rules of order for board meetings. So if somebody can't raise a motion to table a motion while it's pending, then the motion to table can never be raised, because then you would call a vote on the primary motion before you ever.
Yeah. All right. Any further discussion? I'm going to call the roll. The motion is to table the approval of reentry for 2021 school year. Is that correct? Everybody understands what we're voting on? Mr. Wilson?
No.
Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Richardson?
Yes.
Ms. Springate?
No.
I'm going to vote yes, just because of the number of, I just want a very clear understanding of the hybrid and if anyone else has done it. So we will table this motion to our next meeting, and we'll set that meeting before we leave tonight. Okay, next item on the agenda is, I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me, I lost it. Scott, you want to help me here?
It's the amended calendar option. It would start school on August the 26th, so it'd move it close to 2 weeks back. We would keep the same number of breaks that we have. Basically, the calendar looks identical to our current calendar, with the exception that a couple of early release days were moved to the spring semester.
And flexible PD days moved to the beginning.
And flexible PD days would be moved to the beginning. This allows us to not have a set number of instructional days and only meet the number of instructional hours. And then we would work with staff to complete their contracted days based on the legislation surrounding this type of calendar proposal. And so that is our recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
I'm sorry, Sherry?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Wilson, a second by Ms. Springate. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. All right, the motion passes 5-0. Mr. Hawkins, can you tell me what the next agenda item is? I know it's about the bus monitors. But
To approve creation of new positions, it would be up to 20 bus monitors. So
moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Springate, motion by Mr. Wilson. I do have a couple questions on this. I know that FEMA will reimburse, or there is some talk that we could get reimbursement from FEMA for any employees that we hire because of COVID. My understanding was those would have to be hired as temporary employees. Is that how we're hiring these people? Have we looked into that? And I know there's no guarantee we'll get FEMA, but I just want to make sure for these employees that we hire because of the COVID, that they're at least set up in anticipation of trying to get reimbursed.
Well, and we will certainly look. I think what we'll have to get clarification on is, does the temporary status allow us to offer insurance and other benefits? Because that would be a huge drawing card because it's a 4-hour position. And so if it's temporary and we're not able to allow for benefits, it's going to be problematic in trying to fill those positions. If temporary status allows us to continue to offer benefits to those employees, I don't think we have an issue with that. But I think if whatever status allows us to be able to offer employee benefits to these prospective employees, we would want to do.
And I would just add to that, we need to be fair and equitable. We need to be good citizens and good employers. And so absolutely, we should be treating our folks the right way, and they should have the same benefits and the same, as all of our employees. And I understand that it's necessitated by the COVID, but I think we have to be good employers too. And really the fair and ethical thing to do would be to make sure that we hire them so that they can receive those benefits. So thank you.
And we don't know for sure that would preclude that. And there, of course, everybody here is good. We all love our employees, so that's not really the question. But we also need to, if there's a chance that we can get reimbursed for some of these costs, we need to be prudent and good stewards and make sure that we've, looked at that too. So I guess we do have a FEMA person in the county who may be a good person to talk to about this as we set up this job.
Yes, but I think Grant's going to be able to have to guide us if a temporary status means that they can get benefits. That's what I don't know.
Okay, I think he may have left.
No, he's down there.
No, are you there, Grant?
I'm back with a new backdrop. I had to move my computer closer to its life force. I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. I would have to look into that as well. I know everybody's wrestling with the same question.
I mean, have you heard of this though, Grant, from your other clients about FEMA and the things that we may be able to, so you may, yeah.
Everything I have to do.
That's my only concern. I think it's Drew Chandler. Is he the?
Yes, we are very much aware of the FEMA reimbursement. We understand it. We know who our contact is. I think the issue is whether temporary would gain benefits or not. And that's what we'll have to check into.
Okay. Well, that I really hope we do that. We need to be, if that's available, we need to set ourselves in the best position to take advantage of it while balancing, getting good. Because if we get a vaccine and we hire these people and there's a vaccine or nobody rides the bus, we're not going to have a job anyways. So let's just, we want to be as fair as we can to people, but they, in truth, may be temporary, and they'll understand that, I think. Okay. Any further discussion? All right. We have a motion on the table and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All opposed? The motion passes 5-0. All right, I know we had a couple of discussion items. I had asked for those, just kind of on keeping track of the costs of what we're doing. I know that Ms. Bradley had asked May or something that this be separated out. on all of our financial statement each month, and similar to what we do the insurance for the Chromebooks. So hopefully that we can start seeing that in July. But I appreciate it. I don't really have any questions about that right now, but I do appreciate you giving that to us. I assume from looking at those spreadsheets, we've not received any money, either CARES Act money yet, or what was it, Danny, that the state's doing that you knew about?
Years, we have our.
Yeah, we've already gotten our allocation. We've already gotten our allocation.
For CARES?
Yes,
Yes.
For the CARES money?
yes.
Okay, and that was how much?
383,000 after we had to provide a certain amount to the private schools.
Oh, okay.
483. 483. I'm
But
sorry.
500 was for every
It
school
was-
in the county.
It was 483. I'm sorry, and we had to provide so much to the private schools.
And so our portion was again what?
483.
That was our portion?
483,000.
Okay, I'm sorry, Scott. I didn't know if you meant that was total. Okay, 483,000. Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have anything they want to discuss on that? But we will see that on our financial statements going forward, Scott.
Sure,
Can we see that separated out?
sure.
Okay, thank you. All right, since we tabled this motion tonight, Grant, this is not on our agenda. Can we set a date for a town hall and a next meeting?
You're muted.
Grant?
Sorry. The Attorney General's office has said general agenda planning for a future meeting is not a substantive discussion and doesn't require a separate agenda item.
Okay, even in a special meeting, great. All right,
They said it can happen outside of a meeting.
all right, okay, well, let's do it tonight and see if we can set it. Mr. Hawkins, as far as the town hall,
We could do it
how
next
much
week.
lead time do you want on that for advertising, et cetera? I think
We-
you have your presentation.
I mean,
I
well,
think,
it's going to be pretty much what we went through tonight, and I'm sure
and
it'll
maybe a
be.
little bit more, if you can, like, just look at Anderson County, because people are saying that, so if we can say for sure why that's different or whatever.
And again, I do think part of it, Ms. Evelyn, is that we have done that tonight, and we have talked tirelessly about the hybrid model. But
We have
again,
said that it is not possible for us, but then I think it would just be interesting.
I've said it is not possible for us to do it effectively. That's exactly what I said. But again, we can certainly go through it. I can explain the reasons why we don't believe it's a viable option. We have a number of families that would be impacted. We have a number of teachers that would be impacted negatively.
Right, okay. Well,
So-
would you like to schedule this? What kind of lead time do you want on this?
How about next Tuesday?
Okay, that's fine with me. What's the date? That's the
14th.
14th? Yeah, that's perfect.
What time, Debbie?
Let's
Is everybody
do,
okay with that?
can we do 6 to 8?
Yes.
Yes.
Is there anybody not available for that? Okay, great. 6 to 8. Do we want to set a meeting to vote on this then next week? Do we want to,
Debbie,
pardon?
could we, in the interim, could we put something on our website that allows for more feedback from parents, from the community, so that we can have that up in a way that isn't just social media to get that feedback? And can we also do an employee survey, preferably anonymously, so they can weigh in again now, seeing the options that they would be re-entering under?
If it's anonymous, anybody could take it.
Scott, Scott,
I'm-
this I think is a question for you.
And I'm struggling to find out how you would survey that to say, I mean, if we return to school or if we're virtual, what what is your preference? Is that what you want us to ask? Or, I mean, I'm struggling with what question it is you want to ask the staff, because again, I go back to when we surveyed them before, 79% said they wanted to return. The biggest issue, and this was with mask, this was in person, and the biggest issue was childcare. So a very small percentage said that they would not be physically able to do that. So if you can help me with what question it is that we want to ask, but it's to say, what's your preference on the model? That's a very different question than, and is that what you're trying to get at? I'm just trying to figure out exactly what it is you want to ask.
Sure, and I'd be happy to help you with that. I'd like a chance to look over the staff survey from last time, and maybe we could discuss options from that.
Yeah, I think if you want to work with Garrett,
also,
why don't you work with Garrett on that, because he's the one that developed it, and I don't know if anybody else wants to take a look at that before it goes out. That's something we went and reviewed as a cabinet as it related to the surveys that went out.
Okay, so Danny, do you want to do that? And then if anybody else wants to weigh in on that, can we just let Scott know that we'd like to see it too? Does that sound good?
Well, and I just want to reiterate, thank you guys for all your work, and I really appreciate that we're going to have this town hall. I think it's vital that the community can be involved. I love that we had public comment tonight on the agenda, and I hope we can do that on all of our future agendas. But I think the town hall is going to be vital. I just wanted to make sure that we have some guidance to give folks so that we can answer questions, not just, talk on and on about the endless possibilities. So I definitely, absolutely am in favor of the town hall, and I appreciate it.
Scott, the one thing about the town hall, and I don't know, it seems like so many of our questions, and I know you've worked with the health department just endlessly, but so many of the things that people want to know kind of surround them. I don't know if you think it's worth her being there.
I can ask Cassie to see if she would be available. She's been a great partner, and I wish you could.
You could turn to her instead of saying,
well,
we'll have to ask the health department. Maybe we could give an answer to that.
And she may not be able to answer it either, because again, each situation is going to be very individualized.
Sure, if she's willing, but you know what I mean. It just might be nice to have the resource right there if she's willing and she would want to do that. All right, so we're gonna get this up. We've got July 7th, 6 to 8. Is that what we said?
July 14th.
July 14th, 6 to 8, and then when do we want to meet to vote?
Could we just do it that night?
yeah.
But you want to do it right after the forum?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we want to get people's input once we got it tonight, and then I think we want to have a town hall to answer questions. But I do think it's important that we get this kind of wrapped up so that people can start to plan. Because I do think at some point you can just ask questions endlessly and do scenarios endlessly. And I just want to make sure that we're doing what's best for our teachers and our staff and really our parents and students and giving them some guidance as soon as possible. I think that's probably what we all want to be able to do.
Right. Well, that's kind of why this meeting was tonight. So is everyone okay? So is everyone okay with going into a meeting then at 8?
Talking.
Oh, I'm sorry, Allison.
No,
I can never hear her.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Sherry, I agree with Sherry. We can have the town hall on the 14th and then vote on it after that evening. I think that will get all the questions. We've given everyone ample opportunity to submit their questions, to think about the different options. We can make a decision that night and move forward from there.
So, and does anybody have an objection to that? Okay, I think that's a great idea. So then we'll notice that meeting, Scott, for like 8:05, I guess. I don't, or whatever you think is best.
We'll just put it as an agenda item. We'll just put it as an agenda item.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. As much as they want and ask any questions, we don't feel constrained by time. I think that's a good idea. Just have it as an item. and we'll just do all the questions that people want to submit. And really, like Allison said, just, take our time with this and get all the input that we can possibly get, and then just kind of move forward.
Okay, you're right. It's not a separate meeting. I'm making it harder than it is. All right, so we have a plan. That's great.
In the meantime, could we do those things, seek out the parent input on our website? And I'll be happy to work with Mr. Hawkins, like I said, on the survey.
It's just gonna be a quick turnaround on the survey.
Sure.
If you're gonna send, I mean, and again, I'm not opposed to it, but I just think we need to be mindful of what the questions are that we're gonna be asking.
Sure. I couldn't hear Garrett, I'm sorry.
Garrett didn't say anything.
It's the mask. You can't tell when people are talking.
Right. Okay, well, I thought we had established that. Maybe I rushed through that Danny was going to work with them, and then anyone else who wanted to kind of have some input on what was going to be on the survey or on the parent input request on the website would just let Scott know. And is that right? Is that the plan? Okay. I'm not hearing anything, so I'm assuming that's positive. Okay. Anything else? Are we ready to have a motion to adjourn, or?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Mr. Wilson and a second from Ms. Greengate. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is adjourned.